Chapter 187. This chapter is Snow Breaks 1,000 Blades. My lord, Dosen is very adaptable. It is no longer afraid of the shaking of the ship and can walk freely on the deck. At the bow, Marcus looked at Dosen, his eyes shining. It was a look of longing. Intermediate World of Warcraft, combined with the Thorn Sprite, will undoubtedly help List ascend to the title of Viscount. As for him, if he followed List and charged into battle, the title of Chevalier would also be at his fingertips. The aristocratic aspirations of several generations of his family are pressing on Marcus, and Marcus is counting on List. List relies on Dosen and Ella. List did not answer but tentatively pointed to the sea and ordered, "Dosen, rock thorns." Dosen opened his mouth and spat out. A rock pillar that was not very thick suddenly emerged from the sea, and as soon as it emerged, it sank into the sea and disappeared. Woof woof. Dosen was puzzled by his rock thorns, which were instantly submerged. List touched his big head and turned to Marcus. Making something out of nothing. Although the rock thorns are much smaller than on land due to environmental constraints, the changes in the nature of magic it represents are still awe-inspiring. I now believe a little in Glanish triangle theory. Spirit, magic, matter, all three can be converted. Deep in his heart, he was not interested in this theory, but there was no other better theory to explain it. However, Marcus apparently did not have the spirit of exploration. Dragons can produce metals and gems, and elves can produce plants. This is the law of nature. Dosen can make rocks just as a mage can rub fireballs. I think they belong to nature. So do you think alchemists exist? Alchemists? Marcus thought for a moment and said in a serious tone, "I don't know, but I don't want them to exist. All the glory of a knight can be obtained from the charge. Relying on alchemy without sowing will only make us fall." List sighed. Marcus was obviously not a suitable person to communicate with. His mind was filled with the glory of a knight and the glory of a noble. I think alchemy does exist. Turning stone into gold sounds much simpler than creating something out of nothing. He said simply, having lost interest in chatting. He just looked at the blue waves of the sea and let his imagination run wild. All the materials used to forge gold coins come from the golden dragon, which produces gold. If someone grasps the secret of the gold dragon's infection with gold, they might be able to master alchemy. Thinking of this, he remembered the 2 boxes of books he had collected when he salvaged the shipwrecked treasure. Among them was a book on alchemy. Unfortunately, after touching it, the book immediately turned into ashes. This was his greatest regret. Occasionally thinking about it, he would feel distressed. Sometimes he would think if he put the book in the gem space and read it again, would it be preserved? The gem space could make matter still, and perhaps the pages could be opened. Thinking about it carefully, it was unlikely. If a candle was put in, the flame would be crooked after touching it. If a book was put in, it would be broken after touching it. Perhaps the decayed pages could be scraped away layer by layer and part of the content could be obtained. Unfortunately, he didn't think of it at the time. Suppressing his regret for alchemy, his thoughts jumped to the keel bone collected in the gem space. This dragon bone originated from the shipwreck. Because there was no shipbuilder, it could not be inlaid on the flower, so it could not play its role in driving away sea monsters. When I have money, I will build a brand new epic-making schooner, and then I will inlay this keel bone in it. The sun had risen. The sea breeze was blowing with a force of 3 or 4. It happened to be a northwest wind, allowing the flower to sail with the wind, and the speed had exceeded 5 knots. After everything was stable, Costo came out of the captain's room and reported to List, "The current speed of the ship is 5.5 knots. At this rate, the flower will reach Black Horse Island in 13 hours. You are an expert in this area. You will be responsible for everything and ensure safe navigation. If there is a storm, remember to use the comm pearl. I am going to rest now, report to me at any time." The flower was only a medium-sized merchant ship. Therefore the guest room was not spacious. Thomas put the fruit he brought on the table and left to see Dosen. Only List was left in the room. He took out the flame mushroom magic potion from the gem space and began today's potion task. As the potion entered his stomach, the scorching magic spread, hitting his limbs. He silently ran his chi, guiding this magic to evenly impact every part of his body. Compared to the people of this world, he had a clearer understanding of the structure of the body, including the meridians that could accommodate the flow of chi. In China's ancient culture, it has always been about meridians. List had studied meridians before, but on Earth, meridians were an unproven existence. Here, the meridians were real and were the routes and channels for the flow of chi. Magic was stimulated, chi was generated, and the total amount of chi in the body increased little by little. Everything was so smooth that List was addicted to it. He couldn't help but sigh, I am such a genius. According to the experience taught by the Count and Levis's verification, the elite Earth Knight will often feel a variety of physical discomfort in the early stages of taking the potion. This is the aftereffect of the magic potion's impact on the body. It takes a long time to break in and find a balance. He suddenly opened his eyes and said to himself, why don't I feel this way? The effect of taking the flame mushroom magic potion is immediate, but there is no physical discomfort at all. Soon he inferred why his practice was so smooth. I understand the meridian theory of traditional Chinese medicine. Using it as a reference, it is easier to grasp the details of the flow of qi in the meridians and find a balance. These two meridian theories do have many similarities. I know the structure of the body. The way the qi is operated is adjusted according to the structure of the body at any time. Also, I am afraid that my willpower will be stronger than that of an ordinary knight. After all, I am a transmigrator. My soul absorbed the soul of my predecessor and even had an unclear relationship with the smoke dragon. Therefore, my control of qi is like an arm and a finger, without the slightest obstruction or stagnation. Knowledge is power. The Count, Levis, and others may only know the structure of their own bodies limited to the heart, liver, spleen, lungs, kidneys, bones, muscles, and fat. The study of the microscopic level in this world does not exist at all. They don't even know what bacteria and cells are, let alone atoms and electrons. No one cares about medicine or physics. They all focus on qi and magic. It can't be said that there are none. Mages can barely be regarded as a variant of scientists, but the direction of research is on magic. List smiled slightly. And I, with the superposition of the knowledge of two worlds, plus a good bloodline talent, it is not an exaggeration to call me a genius. It was as if he saw the Sky Knight waving to him. After being proud, with the rationality of an adult, he quickly settled down and continued to practice qi. Chapter 188. Sailing was very boring. List had to maintain a noble demeanor, and it was impossible to get along with sailors or knight retainers. So after lunch, he took a nap and continued to practice qi in the afternoon. This practice lasted the whole afternoon. The flowers arrived at the location marked on the nautical chart at about 1:30 in the afternoon, but no trace of Black Horse Island was found, so they had to continue searching at sea. It took nearly 3 hours to find the exact location of Black Horse Island. This nautical chart is off by a full 10 kilometers. Those mice have learned navigation knowledge from dogs. Costo gritted his teeth and roared angrily. If it wasn't for good luck, they might not have found Black Horse Island until late at night. Don't complain, it's lucky to find Black Horse Island. List was very open and even a little bit unsatisfied. He was getting more and more fond of the feeling of taking potions. Now we are looking for a place to dock? Yes, my lord, Black Horse Island is an undeveloped island after all. We need to find a suitable landing place. The outline of Black Horse Island is much larger than I thought, maybe the size of Beer Island. This area is sandy and it is difficult to dock. He pointed out the window to the island horizon. Is it as big as Beer Island? It's just my visual estimation, but it shouldn't be too far off. This inference made List very happy. The size of Beer Island was just right for a viscount's fief. Too big would be cut off and shared with other nobles. Too small would be a loss. Not too big and not too small was just right. Half a circle. When the sun had begun to fall toward the sea level, they finally found a suitable landing place. The flowers slowly approached, anchored, and lowered the wooden boat. Except for a few sailors who were responsible for looking after the flowers, the rest of the people went ashore in wooden boats. The shore was rocky, similar to the docks of Flower Town. As far as the eye could see, the vegetation on the island was not lush, only a few sparse trees in the distance. There were even more weeds. There were some deer in the weeds in the distance, watching List and his party vigilantly, especially looking at the tall and mighty Dosen. They couldn't sense Dosen's intermediate world of Warcraft from afar, but they could tell that Dosen wasn't someone to be trifled with. Teacher Marcus, let's explore along the coastline first. It's only about an hour before nightfall. We'll come back when it's dark and spend the night on the flower. List instructed. Yes. They didn't bring any horses, so everyone was walking. Only List didn't walk because he could ride Dosen. Dosen's body was huge, so riding on it was more comfortable than riding on a horse. Many knight, especially the powerful knight, were no longer limited to riding horses. They had switched to various powerful dragon-type beasts in World of Warcraft. For example, Stephanie Vulture, the wielder of the Magic Eye Aura secret skill, rode a World of Warcraft's vulture and traveled the sky. The Sky Knight's individual combat power was above that of a knight's charge, so the mount highlighted individual combat power. Ordinary knight relied on charging side by side to form a powerful torrent of chi, so the mount highlighted the standard. Horses were the most suitable. Riding a dog wasn't very nice, but riding on Dosun's back, List didn't look out of place. On the contrary, having an intermediate World of Warcraft as a mount would make everyone envious and raise their image. List grabbed Dosun's black fur and held his body in place. List's mind was empty for a while. Taking advantage of a moment's gap, he called out the smoke quest. The smoke condensed and formed serpentines. Quest completed. Reward: dragon horses. There is no doubt that after the flower docked, the voyage to sea was completed, and there was no need to wait for the return voyage to be considered complete. After a while, the smoke changed. A new quest was issued. Quest: you have set foot on a new land. As a lord who takes pioneering as his duty, how can you let Black Horse Island be abandoned and not manage it? Please establish a temporary stronghold on Black Horse Island and settle 100 serfs. Reward: a few decaying bones. Temporary stronghold? A few decaying bones? List quickly thought of a previous smoke quest, a quest about ghosts, and the reward was a broken bone. It was eventually determined to be a keel made from the bones of a high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft. So, what do these decaying bones look like? It was not easy to guess, so he didn't think about it. For smoke quests, sometimes List becomes very lazy because as long as he can complete the quest, the reward will always come to him through coincidence. Establishing a temporary stronghold is a planned quest. The team walked for only a few miles. They found that the rocky coast had disappeared and was replaced by a sandy beach. The location where the ship stopped is probably at the junction of east and west. The east side of Black Horse Island is mostly sandy, and the west side is mostly rocky cliffs. Costo often goes to sea and has been to many islands, so he can infer the overall situation of the island from the details of the island. Look at the center of the island. There are no undulating mountains, more gentle slopes. He narrowed his eyes, took a closer look at the distance and added, "Sir, I found that Black Horse Island is very round." Very round? Yes, the topography of the island is coherent, at least on our side. I don't know about the opposite side. Maybe we can sail again tomorrow, circle the island, and thoroughly observe the shape of Black Horse Island. List looked up at the sunset in the sky and said, "Then wait until tomorrow. The situation is unclear now. Let's go back to the flowers first." Nothing happened that night and nothing happened either. List was not very used to sleeping on the ship. The sound of the waves, mixed with the snoring of the sailors and the squire knight in the cabin, made it difficult for him to sleep. Trembling Woods was guarding outside his door. Dogs also snore, so it is not surprising that Dosun snores like blowing bubbles. List himself never snores and likes a very quiet environment when sleeping. Unable to sleep, he simply sat up, took out a crystal lamp and put it on the table. He bought the crystal lamp from Glanny, which is very convenient to carry and use, equivalent to a flashlight. With light, he continued to take things out of the gem space: a red blood sword worn on his waist during the day and put into the gem space at night, a bow, arrows, a set of fine steel knight equipment, and 3 fine steel knight spears for emergencies, mithril or crystals and jade neatly stacked. There are also black pearls, keel bones, binoculars, floating bottles and smoke grass. And a lot of food, including a lot of milk, eggs, roast meat, vegetables, fruits, bread and various seasonings. The gem space is a static substance and will not deteriorate, and food can be stored as long as he wants. With these materials, it is not a problem to throw him on a deserted island and live a happy life for a few months. He even put a few pieces of flower soap in it. There are also 30 flame mushroom magic potions made by Elk Sun, which are also in the gem space. It's not easy to save up a little bit, but I have a rich family. Satisfied with the materials, he rearranged them, put the space gem close to his body, lay in bed and counted sheep. Chapter 189. After circling around the island, as Costo had speculated, Black Horse Island was a non-standard oval island. There was no natural shelter, and the most suitable place to build a harbor was the rock pier where they had anchored last night. However, it was difficult to berth large ships, and the pier was not deep enough. Even medium-sized merchant ships like the Flower seemed a bit difficult. When the sun began to release heat, the crowd gradually went deeper into the hinterland of Black Horse Island to look for the dragon horses. There were few trees on the island, and the undulating mountains were not large, so the field of vision was wide and they could see far away. Marcus kept using his telescope along the way to look for traces of the horses, and it didn't take much effort to find what he wanted. "Sir, this is horse dung, the dragon horses are nearby." When he bent down and turned over a small black ball in the grass with a stick, he said excitedly. The knight's familiarity with horse dung was definitely more than the few moles on his wife's body. List was no stranger to horse dung. He raised his head and looked at the gentle hill in front of him. "It should be on the opposite side of the hill, let's go around." Dosen took the lead, carrying List and taking small steps. Marcus and the others had no mounts, so they could only trot. After a while, the group successfully crossed the weeds and came to the other side of the hill. Without binoculars, they could see that on the hillside in the distance, a group of black wild horses was leisurely eating grass, very comfortable. Dragon horses. They are all black horses, they should be dragon horses. Don't be in a hurry, first observe carefully and count how many horses there are. List calmly took out his binoculars and looked at the dragon horses. In the camera, the steeds, which were not inferior to the castle's black dragon, didn't seem to notice their party and only cared about eating grass and frolicking. 1, 2, 3, a total of 37 black horses. It was a very small group of horses, but to List, it was a huge gain. That was because every dark horse here could be a dragon stallion. After Marcus finished counting the horses, he could not suppress his excitement. "My lord, there are a total of 37 horses. There are 9 foals, and the remaining 28 horses are enough to equip 2 knight teams. Teacher Marcus, you can have one of them now." "Thank you, my lord." Marcus wished he could immediately catch a black horse and tame it, but in order to not alarm the horses, he still said, "There must be a horse king among these wild horses. Sir, you should personally tame the horse king so that the remaining black dragon won't run away." Horse king was a common name. Among a herd of wild horses, there would definitely be a leader. It was usually the bravest stallion that led and protected the herd. Once the horse king was tamed, the other horses would continue to follow the horse king's lead. This meant that the entire herd of horses would be tamed. "Can you confirm which one is the horse king?" List was eager to give it a try. The horse king naturally belonged to him. Only the lord had the right to ride the horse king. "It's very simple. We will intimidate the herd, and the one leading it will be the horse king." The task of intimidating was directly given to Dosen. As soon as Dosen appeared, the aura of World of Warcraft frightened the black dragon herd. Then the herd stopped eating grass and turned around to run. "Can you clearly see which one it is?" "Yes, sir." The horse king is the black horse with a purplish-red mark on its forehead. It has the longest mane and is also the tallest. I feel that it is more spirited than Sir's black dragon. Upon hearing this, List said, "First, we will clearly examine the surrounding terrain. After the herd relaxes, we will encircle and capture them. I will personally tame the horse king." The black dragon herd was already like a turtle in a jar, so there was no need to be too nervous. List's location was roughly a bit south of the central part of the island. The northern slope of the highest hill was the grazing pasture of the black dragon herd. The range of the pasture was very large, stretching from one hill to another, including the valley between the mountains. It was a grassland with sparse trees. "This is a natural pasture. I found a total of 4 kinds of high-quality pasture. Sir, please take a look." Marcus was very familiar with the pasture. "This is Lamish chinensis, which is most suitable for grazing sheep. There are not many of them, but they are very nutritious. This is needle grass, which is the favorite food of horses, but the needle grass here is a little weak. This is alfalfa, which has no sprite worms, so it can't grow well. This is ice grass, which is a good pasture. Unfortunately, it is not growing well and the plant is short." The pasture on Black Horse Island definitely had the potential to become a top pasture with a rich variety of pasture. However, the land was barren and there was a lack of sprite worms to take care of it, resulting in the general poor growth of the pasture. This was probably the reason why there were only 37 black dragon horses. The pasture could not support more wild horses. The team continued to explore. They went all the way to the northeast of the center of Black Horse Island, climbed the highest hill, and barely got a glimpse of the whole island. The outline of the oval island was lacking in undulations. The highest hill was at their feet, which was estimated to be no more than 300 meters above sea level. In addition, there were 3 low hills. The 4 hills, distributed in the shape of a mouth, formed the topography of the island. First, mark them as Lamish chinensis Hill, Needlegrass Hill, Alfalfa Hill, and the Ice Grass Hill at our feet. List irresponsibly named the 4 hills. Standing at the top of the Ice Grass Hill, one could see that on the hillside of Needlegrass Hill, the black dragon horses had begun to graze leisurely again. The grassland stretched from Lamish chinensis Hill to Needlegrass Hill and half of Alfalfa Hill. On the hillside from Alfalfa Hill to Icegrass Hill, the number of miscellaneous trees began to increase and the pasture gradually decreased. Cut down all the miscellaneous trees here, cultivate the pasture, and expand the size of the black dragon horses. List had already seen the gorgeous picture of the black dragon horses galloping back and forth between the four hills in the future. Of course, now was not the time for imagination. He and Marcus discussed how to tame the Horse King. There was not much technical content. It was to divide the retainer knight and sailors they brought into 4 teams and approach the black dragon horses from 4 directions, causing the black dragon horses to be at a loss of advance and retreat, panicking and messing up their formation. Then List directly rushed over, mounted the Horse King and began taming it. For an elite Earth Knight, taming a horse was very easy. Therefore, an hour later, List put his arm around the Horse King's neck, letting the Horse King jump and gallop all over the hillside. The man and the horse wrestled. He was even in the mood to hum a song. Spin, jump, I close my eyes. Another half an hour passed. The Horse King didn't have the slightest intention of stopping, and was still running all over the hillside. Compared to when it tamed Black Dragon, the Horse King was clearly stronger and more patient. But in the end it still submitted. After an unknown amount of time, the Horse King lowered its proud head, letting List ride and drive it. Congratulations, sir, for obtaining an even more spirited mount. It is indeed stronger and taller than Black Dragon. List took the handkerchief handed over by Thomas, wiped his sweat and threw it back. With an unconcealable excitement in his tone, he touched the Horse King's neck. Do you see the reddish-purple hair on its forehead? Doesn't it look like lightning? List faintly smiled. Chapter 190. This chapter is Talented Men of Rivers and Mountains. Lightning was a stallion, there was no doubt about it. In order to know how old it was, List forcibly opened its mouth and let Marcus observe its teeth. A normal stallion has 40 teeth, including 12 incisors, 4 canines and 24 molars. A mare has no canines, only 36 teeth. To determine the age of a horse, it mainly depends on the incisors. Incisors are divided into incisors, intermediate teeth and caries. The incisors are the front incisors in the center, the caries are the incisors at the edge, and the intermediate teeth are the incisors between the incisors and the caries. Incisors are divided into 2 stages. One is the milk stage, which is what we call the milk teeth, and the other is the permanent teeth. While observing, Marcus also explained to List and the Squire Knight, not forgetting to shoulder the responsibilities of a tutor and an instructor of the Knight team. Within 1 year of age, the milk incisors grow in 1 to 2 weeks, the milk intermediate teeth grow in 3 to 6 weeks, and the milk caries grow in 6 to 8 months. At the age of 2.5, the milk incisors fall off, and the permanent incisors grow. At the age of 3, the upper and lower permanent incisors touch, which is said to be fully grown. At the age of 3.5, the milk intermediate teeth fall off, and the permanent intermediate teeth grow. At the age of 4, the permanent middle teeth are fully grown. At the age of 4.5, the milk caries fall off and the permanent teeth grow. At the age of 5, the permanent teeth are fully grown. He pointed to Lightning's completely closed teeth and said, Lightning's incisors are neatly in contact, which are permanent teeth, so its age is over 5 years old. After the age of 5, we need to judge its age according to the black pit of the teeth, which is the pit in the middle of the teeth. According to the depth of the black pit and the time of erasure, the age of a horse can be determined from 6 to 11 years old. After the black pit completely disappeared, according to the shape, size and position of the teeth marks, the age of a horse can be determined from 13 to 18 years old. If Lightning is an ordinary warhorse, its age should be about 8 years old. Marcus made his own judgment after the observation. However, he continued, many excellent warhorses are mixed-blooded World of Warcraft stallions and dragon horses. There is a certain degree of error in estimating their age through their teeth. Using Lightning's World of Warcraft stallion bloodline to correct for the error, she may already be 10 years old or even older. The development of World of Warcraft stallions and dragon horses was not much different from normal horses, but the strengthening of their bloodline made their teeth better and more resistant to wear and tear. The speed at which the black nest was being worn away and the speed at which the teeth marks were vanishing would also slow down. Marcus didn't know that Black Dragon had dragon bloodline, so he speculated that Lightning should be 10 years old. List, on the other hand, made a correction based on the dragon stallion and deduced that Lightning should be 12 years old. It was a fine horse in its prime. List looked at the horses lingering not far away, unwilling to leave the Horse King, and said with a smile, I'll ride Lightning to get used to it. Teacher Marcus, you should also choose a group of Black Dragon horses to tame. Marcus took a deep breath and knelt on one knee. "Thank you, sir." The value of a black dragon, as far as he knew, probably exceeded 100 gold coins. This was a huge gift. He had no choice but to treat it seriously. If he knew that it was a dragon horse and retained its breeding ability, its value could be calculated in dragon coins. Even if he sold it, it would still be worth 1,000 gold coins. Perhaps he would prostrate himself in worship. After receiving Marcus's kowtow, Liszt said indifferently, "The black dragon bloodline is very strong. Before going to the battlefield, they will be raised as stallions for the time being to continue expanding the herd." That's how it should be. Marcus was deeply convinced. Then, with trembling legs, he walked over to the black dragon herd. He wanted to tame a black dragon that belonged to him. The retainer knight looked at Marcus enviously. They didn't have the qualifications to ride such a precious horse and could only ride an ordinary horse. A cool breeze blew gently and the sun was warm. Riding on a stable horse, Liszt let lightning wander on its own. His thoughts had already jumped to another matter. Black Dragon is the name of my mount in the castle. I originally thought that there would only be one, so I named it Black, because of its pure black body. Now that there are so many Black Dragon horses, is Black Dragon the name of a horse or a herd of horses? In the end, his feelings for Black Dragon prevailed. Black Dragon will be the name of a single horse just like my Fiery Dragon. The current herd should have a new breed name. Sapphire Grand Duke has blue-blooded horses, so maybe I can have a herd of black-blooded horses? Everyone was a dragon horse and no one was more noble than the other. But it seems that blue-blooded horses aren't blue. Forget it, black-blooded horses are still very nice to hear. Just like Fergana horses, it sounds like a name that a top-notch horse should have. Thus, the pure Black Dragon horse had an official name. Black Dragon still belonged to Black Dragon, but it was foreseeable that in the future, Black Dragon's status would decline significantly and give way to Liszt's new mount, Horse King Lightning. Strictly speaking, Lightning was no longer pure black. On its forehead, there was a small tuft of purple-red hair. Chapter 191. This chapter is Fantasy Reaper 11 Reward Added. The waves were sparkling and the breeze was blowing. Today was not a windy day, so the flowers did not sail fast. The sailors in the oar room had begun to slide the oars to speed up the voyage. The servant brought a stool and Liszt sat on the bow deck enjoying the sea view. Dosen was lying on the side of the ship. A voyage had made him overcome his fear of the sea. From the beginning he was afraid of the deep blue water, but now he was staring at the sea in a daze. His ability to adapt was amazing. In the near future, he was about to become a qualified sailor, no, a water dog. Dogs generally know how to swim and the flying dust dog is also a dog. Liszt must let him learn how to swim. The waves rolled. The flowers were far away from Black Horse Island. There were sporadic small islands around Black Horse Island. Perhaps they could not be called islands. They could barely be regarded as coral reefs. A wave could directly submerge the coral reefs. Some of the reefs were covered with trees and some were pure sand and stones. The scenery is really beautiful, blue sea, blue sky, seagulls, sandy beaches, but there are no fragrant coconut trees. If it was on Earth, Black Horse Island and the nearby reefs could definitely be developed into a resort no less than the Maldives. Unfortunately, the Grand Duchy of Sapphire is an island country. The nobles here are islanders and they are not in the mood to enjoy the beach scenery. The nobles were busy robbing the Eagle Kingdom. The Count and Levis, I don't know how much wealth they have robbed, and I don't know when the Tulip Fleet will return. There should be no shortage of serfs this time, and the return speed should be fast. Thinking of 1,000 serfs. Liszt's heart was burning. There were more than 2,500 serfs in the territory, and there was not enough manpower to farm in Flower Town. Now there was Black Horse Island to develop, and there was a shortage of manpower. The lack of people made many of his ideas unachievable. He could only slowly farm and slowly save some gold coins. He could not get rich overnight. I need to maintain my potions. With the amount of potions I'm using now, it's not enough to just rely on the flame mushroom. It's still not enough even with the fast-growing magic thorns. I have to use the earnings from the black tulip to buy more potions. There are not many businesses that can make money without the magic potion. The seafood business will last for another 6 months and it is estimated that it will have to be withdrawn. The nobles with a little brain are secretly catching seafood in secret, but they are not selling it to the public. I don't know when the flower wine will be brewed. At present, the new money-making project is the flower soap produced by the soap workshop. Bernal Poisoned Egg was seizing the time to reform the process, prepare for mass production and put it on the market as soon as possible. List hoped that the flower soap could monopolize the Coral Island market within 3 months, and then cooperate with Tulip Castle or Beer Castle to open up the outer island market. With the quality and cost of the flower soap, it could become a pillar industry in Flower Town. First, I'll make money with the flower soap and then I'll buy serfs. When I have a large number of serfs, I'll be able to start more industries, make more money, and then buy more serfs. After I'm fully armed, I'll go to the battlefield and be awarded with meritorious service. He began to fantasize. Viscount, Earl, Marquis, Duke, and then riding a dragon. But after imagining the scene of riding a dragon, along with the rocking of the flowers, everything suddenly seemed dull. Sure enough, poverty has limited my imagination. The meaning of life, the goal of struggle, besides riding a dragon, there is no other pursuit. At this moment, there was a sailor's loud exclamation in his ear, "Leviathan! It's Leviathan! Oh my God, we've encountered a sea monster. We're going to be eaten by Leviathan, ah! Woof woof! It's over, it's over! Leviathan?" List didn't react at first, he didn't know what Leviathan was. But then there was Costo's roar in his ear, don't panic, do your job. It's not a Leviathan, it's just a big sea beast. They're friendly and never hurt ships sailing at sea." Perhaps Costo's reassurance worked. The sailors no longer panicked. Thomas also calmed down from his panic and ran to List. "Master, we've encountered a sea beast." "I saw it." List got up and pacified Dosen, whose fur was standing on end and barking, and looked at the sea on the left side of the flowers. There, a sea beast waving its huge pectoral fins was leaping from the sea. Its huge body rolled on the surface of the sea before falling back into the water, setting off wild waves. It was some kind of whale and he recognized it at a glance. It was a sea beast, not a sea monster. The magic eye did not observe any signs of magic. The sea beast was similar to the humpback whale he had seen in Man and Nature. If its huge pectoral fins were to hit the flowers, it was estimated that the flowers would be smashed to pieces. However, it did not approach the flowers. It was just not far away, moving side by side with the flowers. "Sir." Marcus hurriedly ran over, followed by the retainer knight. They all felt the danger and came to protect List. But it was not dangerous. List quickly restrained his nervousness in front of the behemoth. On the surface he pointed to the humpback whale. "It's very majestic, very magnificent. It's rare to see a sea beast up close. Teacher Marcus, everyone sit down and enjoy together." "Sir, do you want to hide in the cabin first?" Marcus worriedly asked. "It's a sea beast." "Don't worry, Captain Costo has told us about sea beasts. They are very friendly." List smiled, calm and at ease. The retainer knight looked at him with admiration. He was indeed worthy of being a lord favored by the glory of the knight, the embodiment of courage. After listening to List's comfort, Marcus bowed, relaxed his body and no longer made a fuss. Together with List they enjoyed the rare spectacle. Walking with the giant beast. However, it was only a moment before the humpback whale seemed to lose interest in the flowers, or perhaps it just came up to the surface to take a breath. With another roll on the surface, its huge body sank into the sea and disappeared completely. After the waves, the sea was calm again. Dosen's erect dog fur relaxed, and his pair of corium or dog eyes stared at the sea, seemingly still looking for the humpback whale. Captain Costo left the captain's cabin and hurried to the deck, breaking the atmosphere still immersed in the humpback whale's huge figure. "Sir Lord, that was a sea beast just now. They are often seen sailing at sea. In fact, they are very friendly, rarely attacking ships and even escorting ships." "I know, it really is not hostile." List agreed with Costo's statement. He asked, "I know that the behemoths that appear at sea are called sea beasts, but what is Leviathan?" Just now, he clearly heard many sailors shouting for Leviathan. Chapter 192. This chapter is, My Horse Feeds the Sheep. On land there are magical beasts that can release magic, which are called World of Warcraft. In the ocean there are also magical sea animals that can release magic, which are called sea monsters. There are no marine experts to classify the animals in the sea, and naturally, there is no classification of whales and sharks. The huge animals encountered by ships at sea are called sea monsters. The Leviathan is obviously not a sea monster. Legend has it that the Leviathan is a sea snake that can release stormy magic and sweep away passing ships. The appearance of the humpback whale provided some topics of conversation during the boring voyage. In the afternoon, the flowers returned smoothly and docked at the crude dock. It took a full 3.5 days to go back and forth. When he returned to the castle, Gort, who had heard the news, introduced him to two strangers. "My lord, Randy Kettle and Russell Scale are both Earth Knights, and they want to follow you. Gort said, Randy is the son of Sir Lydon, and Russell graduated from the Knight Academy. They are both very young but have good knight talent and initiative. Sir Lydon was the captain of the Knight of Tulip Castle, who often guarded Levis. Randy was the son of Lydon, which meant that he was an illegitimate child. Otherwise, the introduction would have been Lydon's second son, third son, or something like that. As for Russell, he graduated from the Knight Academy. There was no introduction of his family background, so he was obviously a civilian. Randy, Russell, since you are both Earth Knights, why didn't you join the Lord's Knight teams and follow the Count to the battlefield? List looked at the two with interest. He didn't expect someone to join him so soon. Randy was a handsome young man, and he replied politely, I am a superfluous person at home, not valued and not qualified to participate in the Knight team. He did not hide his identity as an illegitimate child and openly admitted it. Russell then replied, the Earl chose a knight to go to the battlefield, and I was eliminated because I had just broken through and my combat effectiveness was not up to standard. But please rest assured, Lord Baron, I will train hard and master my own battle aura secret book. I will strive to become a qualified battlefield knight. He spoke confidently and his attitude was decent. At first impression, List felt that both of them were good, but he would not easily recruit followers. He immediately said, a knight chooses to follow the Lord loyally, and the Lord also chooses a knight to fight side by side. I hope that in the following period of time, we can establish a friendship. We are willing to accept Lord Baron's inspection. Randy and Russell replied together. List nodded. Since you are following me as knight, I will not send you to the administrative office. You will be my assistants, assisting Marcus in training the children and youths in the territory. He directly threw Randy and Russell to Marcus. It was not his style. The superior only needed to work and the inferior needed to work. After dealing with the Earth Knight's followers, Gort reported again, My lord, I also received a letter in the last 2 days. The letter was written by Zambrata. Do you remember him? He was Lytton's former tutor. He was punished by the Earl for condoning Lytton's beating of innocent civilians and lost his title. List remembered after Gort's reminder. Zambrata was also a Lord Knight. He was hired as Lytton's tutor a few years ago and had been in and out of Tulip Castle a lot. It wasn't a big deal that Lytton was beating up a commoner, but the reason why the Count was angry was that he didn't learn good things at such a young age. So Zambrata was stripped of his title. Zambrata wrote to you, what did he say? He just talked about the past, but his thoughts were revealed between the lines. He may want to come to Flower Town and hope to get an official job. Flower Town was indeed short of officials, but List would not easily recruit people. Do you know anything about him? I haven't had much contact with him and I don't know much about his character, but I know that he has a very outstanding talent. Well, he has traveled around the Iron and Steel Ridge Kingdom and 7 vassal countries, and he can always say a lot of amazing customs and rare things. Traveled around 8 countries? List heard this and his heart moved. Is that so? Advisor Gort, continue to keep in touch with him. If he is willing to come to Flower Town to work, you will be responsible for receiving him if it is inconvenient for me. After all, Zambrata was directly deprived of his title by the Earl. Deprivation of title was a major crime second only to exile among the punishments for the aristocracy. As the Earl's son, he could not ignore the Earl's will and recruit such a person as an official of his own territory. He could only be appointed in private, and he could get the information himself to protect his father's face. In one day he would have 3 more subordinates. List was in a good mood. So many people were optimistic about him, indicating that his promotion to Viscount was the general trend. By the way, Advisor Gort, you and Teacher Marcus should cooperate more and build the temporary stronghold on Black Horse Island as soon as possible. Don't delay. Please rest assured that I will always put the important matter of Black Horse Island in the first place. At the same time, keep the news of Black Horse Island in your heart, understand? Understood. After dealing with official business, Carter came to report on the affairs of the castle. Master, during the 3 days you were away, Mrs. Morrison and I have selected 20 children, 10 boys and 10 girls. They have begun their internship in the castle, mainly working in the afternoon, training during the day and staying with host families at night. After Carter finished speaking, he asked, "Do you want to meet him? It just so happens that I have nothing to do, so let them come over and meet me. By the way, tell me their names." List said casually. In fact, he mainly wanted to know what kind of little girl Maggie was specifically mentioned in the smoke mission. The young servants who were practicing downstairs, led by Carter, lined up one by one and appeared in front of him. My name is Polly, my lord. Soon List met Maggie in the study. "My name is Maggie, master." The little girl who spoke was short among her peers, very cute with a few freckles on her face. Looking at her appearance, even if she grew up in the future she would probably be an ordinary girl. Such appearance conditions did not meet the secretary standards pursued by List. It was inevitable that he was a little disappointed, but at the same time he was also sure that since it was not a secretary, there must be other clues on Maggie's body that would be involved in the follow-up mission of the smoke mission. So he smiled gently. "I hope you have a good life in the castle, little Maggie." "Yes, I have a very good life here, master." Maggie's little face was red and a little shy. Maybe she had never seen such a handsome aristocratic lord, and he smiled so gently. She waited for Carter to tell her that she could leave. Chapter 193. Master is a real aristocrat. In the kitchen maid Irene Fourfingers proudly said to Maggie, who followed her as an intern, "Little Maggie, you will like this castle. I have never seen a nobleman more noble than master. His nobility is innate and we can only look up to him." "Yes, Sister Irene." Maggie nodded seriously. In fact, Irene spoke too fast and she only understood part of the content, which was the nobility of master. "Don't add too much flour, otherwise the pineapple bun won't taste good." Irene stopped Maggie from pouring the flour. "Our kitchen has many new kinds of bread, which were jointly invented by Mrs. Abby and Boss Rayner. Master likes these new kinds of bread." She suddenly leaned close to Maggie's ear and said, "Every day Mrs. Abby makes a variety of bread flavors. If master doesn't eat it, we can eat some." Maggie was surprised. "Ah, master, do servants eat good bread?" Her serpentine stuttered, and she had to add gestures to make Irene understand. You will understand master's kindness and generosity later." In fact, Maggie understood in the evening because she was given a small piece of pineapple bun while eating in the kitchen. In the evening, the Lord invited 2 guests to a banquet and asked the kitchen to make a lot of bread. In the end there was a lot left, so each servant could get a small piece. Compared with black bread, this characteristic white bread was simply the best food Maggie had ever eaten in her life. "Little maids, little servants, keep up. Be careful of snakes on the road when it's dark," the patrol shouted. They were responsible for sending the young intern servants back to their respective host families at night. Maggie followed behind the patrol, feeling very at ease. She knew that the snakes were just to scare the children. Recalling the delicious pineapple bun, she kept whispering in her heart, "Praise Master." Then she suddenly remembered that she had eaten the pineapple bun, but forgot to leave it for Mrs. Harriet's family. Although boarding was forced by the town's administrative office, Mrs. Harriet's family treated her very well. Should I form a mother-daughter contract with Mrs. Harriet? She thought about the things she had been struggling with for several days. As a 9-year-old girl, her parents were killed by mercenaries. Other than being sad, she naturally longed for a new family. But in her heart, she still worried about her sister, who was 10 years older than her, tall and had curly hair. She always remembered what her sister said when she left home. "Maggie, wait for me to come back. I will teach you magic and we will be magicians together, magicians who can release fireballs." At that time, my sister was 15 years old, and her parents forced her to marry a crippled old man in the village. The next day, she left home without hesitation. Her sister had always been her most admired idol. "Maggie, you're back." Before she knew it, Maggie had returned to the town, and the kind Mrs. Harriet was standing at the door to greet her. "Oh yes, Mrs. Harriet, you needn't. Every day. It's okay, come in first." At night, the moon formed a crescent in the sky. Maggie lay in bed, thinking about Mrs. Harriet's kindness to her, thinking about the delicious food in the castle. Somehow, the appearance of her sister in her childhood suddenly became vague and distant, and some decisions quietly emerged in her mind. If Mrs. Harriet asks me again, I will say yes to her. She's like my mother. The morning air was fresh and List greedily inhaled 2 more mouthfuls. Then he began his daily training in walking the dog, and then went on to inspect his territory. He didn't like to make friends. Several aristocrats in North Valley City sent him birthday banquets, aristocratic gatherings and so on. At most he sent people to send some gifts, but he didn't go in person. This was a low-key way. After all, the heir of Coral Island was his brother Levis. It was not convenient for him to be too close to other aristocrats. Black Dragon held its head high and stepped on the gravel road. It still didn't know that its status was facing collapse. Perhaps when Black Horse Island came out, it would understand that the king was the king. Whether it was yesterday or tomorrow, your uncle will always be your uncle. The town lacks stonemasons to carve and polish stones. Otherwise, the roads in the town could be paved with slabs, and the roads in the castle could also be paved with slabs. Accompanying List was Isaiah, who reported the progress of various projects in Flower Town in his capacity as an administrative officer. The stone road is a big project, and the town's manpower should be used in more urgent ways. Yes, sir. At present, the autumn harvest has been completed, and the roads and houses have been completed. I am arranging for the serfs to concentrate on reclaiming the wastelands of the settlements, and waiting for the next batch of 1,000 serfs to be transported. These farmlands can be taken over smoothly and sown directly next spring. How is the expansion of the flame mushroom shed going? It has been expanded by 20 mu, and the total area has reached 50 mu. The serfs are skilled in growing flame mushrooms, and the current output has doubled compared to the beginning. It is expected that in a month, the new shed will double the output again. Isaiah replied happily. But he also raised his doubts. Sir, is the income from the flame mushroom processing workshop directly credited to the castle without going through the town's administrative office? No, but the tax and welfare issues of the shiitake serfs will be uniformly arranged by the town's administrative office, and then subsidized by the castle. The flame mushroom magic potion has entered List's stomach, and no one has yet to find out that he has become an elite Earth Knight. Isaiah did not ask any more questions. When it comes to magic potions, it is normal for the Lord to not want others to intervene. The group unknowingly came to the Garden of Thorns. The thorns worm's worm stalk has grown into a 4-meter-high thorny tree with luxuriant branches and leaves, very eye-catching. 2/3 of the surrounding clusters are fast-growing magic thorns, and the remaining 1/3 are fast-growing iron thorns. Only a small area is left for ordinary fast-growing thorns as a memento. It is unknown if there are new mutated thorns born. Without waiting for List to ask, Isaiah said, My lord, the Garden of Thorns originally had 180 acres of land. With the birth of Ella, I have circled 800 acres of land for the expansion of the Garden of Thorns. According to the current ratio, 1/3 is fast-growing iron thorns and 1/3 is fast-growing magic thorns. He then pointed in the direction of the Thorns Ridge. The fast-growing thorns and poison thorns have been transplanted to the edge of the Thorns Ridge. The number of serfs is insufficient. At present, there are only 50 serfs responsible for transplanting the thorns. I have calculated their workload. About 1/3 of the thorns can be transplanted before winter. Don't worry about the spiky brambles and poison brambles. Plant as many as you can. With the iron brambles and magic brambles, List no longer cared about the spiky brambles and poison brambles, especially the thorns. They are of no use at all and can only prevent the invasion of chickens, ducks and geese. Chapter 194. Whoa! After patrolling the territory, List saw Ella teasing Dosen. This lively and active elf liked to fly inside and outside the castle. It had a very overbearing temper. Whoever dared to block its way, it would beat them with its fist. It could also sow seeds. This should be regarded as a kind of wood, or natural magic, which could quickly accelerate the germination of seeds and then entangle people. It seemed to be a fast-growing thorny thorn. The huge wooden thorns could stab people to death. Of course, it had never stabbed people. List forbade it to sow seeds at will. This magic looked terrible, but it could only deal with ordinary people. A knight with combat energy could easily use it to destroy the germination of seeds. Therefore, the combat power of the elf was generally very weak, almost non-existent. Even ordinary people could kill it when it was unprepared. But Ella did not feel that it was weak. Its overbearing temper had never changed. Then, of course, it met another grumpy guy, Dosen. Dosen was very curious when he saw Ella for the first time. He wanted to stick out his tongue and lick the smooth and crystal Ella. He did not want to provoke Ella. With a wave of his hand, he sowed the seeds, which shocked Dosen. He did not know how to use the magic in his body. He could only watch the thorns bind him and make him scream. But after all, he was an intermediate World of Warcraft with rough skin and thick flesh. After the pain, there were no injuries left. After getting rid of the thorns, he chased Ella around. A little fellow and a big fellow had formed a grudge, and as soon as they met, they would tear each other apart. There was no possibility of peaceful coexistence. A few days later, Dosen was the first to admit defeat. His magic could not hurt Ella and he could not fly. He could only be kite by Ella. Of course, it was also possible to let Ella go. He knew that Ella and List had a good relationship. However, Ella did not let him go. She always teased him. She sowed a handful of seeds and urged them to sprout. She gave Dosen the art of binding. When List came back, He saw that Ella once again touched Dosen, and Dosen was covered with thorns. The thorns quickly sprouted, growing around Dosen's body, and soon dyed the big black dog into a big green dog. Dosen did not react at all. It only barked weakly at List. Woof woof. Jayla, stop. List glared at the thorn sprite, and it reluctantly stopped summoning the thorns and landed on List's head. He yawned and decided to sleep. List pulled Jia down and handed her to Thomas. Put her in a jade box and send her to the worm room to sleep. Wow. Wow. Ella did not want to. List stared at it again and communicated with it telepathically, letting it understand that resistance will be beaten. At this time, the thorn sprite lay down in the jade box and prepared to sleep. Sprites spend most of their time sleeping. After all, their body is a worm stalk. She pulled off the thorns. Dosen lay on the ground aggrievedly, expressing his pity to List. An intermediate World of Warcraft can't even beat a sprite, it's a waste. List kicked it lightly. Let's go and complain to your wife. I'll take you to the kennel first. Trembling Woods successfully regained his liveliness after working hard in the kennel. But List was a little regretful. The kennel keeper, Old Defoe, shook his head and said, Sir Lord, I'm afraid that Trembling Woods doesn't have the ability to make these female wolf dogs pregnant. According to normal mating situations, several female dogs are in heat and can easily conceive puppies. But there is no movement at all. Forget it, take care of them. Ordinary low-level World of Warcraft can generally mate with the same species of wild beasts. Probably at the intermediate World of Warcraft, there are more bloodline mutations and reproductive isolation has been produced. At the very least, Trembling Woods should have formed reproductive isolation with the wolf dog. Fortunately, there is Stupid Woman. Seeing Dosen and Stupid Woman together, List's regret quickly turned into expectation. Looking forward to the future army of dogs. I just don't know if the offspring of Dosen and Stupid Woman will be intermediate or low-level World of Warcraft. Thinking of this, he suddenly remembered that since he came to Flower Town, the town has entered the breeding season. After the town's civilian life settled down, more and more people chose to make little people. Stupid Woman was pregnant, the cow was pregnant, Fire Dragon was pregnant, the fruit-stealing monkey was pregnant, Gort's lover Freya was getting bigger and bigger, and he heard that Marcus was also busy fighting with his wife. It seemed that he was the only one still single. He shook his head. List stopped thinking and continued to tame Stupid Woman, tempting her to obey his instructions with dried meat. In the study, the crystal light was bright. There were several night novels on the table, and List was casually flipping through them, recording something on a piece of thick bast paper from time to time. There was a knock on the door. Carter came in with a cup of milk tea. Master, Mrs. Morrison brewed milk tea, I put it on the table for you. List did not look up and continued to write and draw. Okay. Mr. Burnell wants to report to you on the progress of the flower soap. Invite him in. A moment later, Burnell was led into the study by Carter. He knew that List did not like nonsense, so after a salute he said directly, My lord, I have completed the transformation process of the flower soap and can be put into mass production. At the current speed of the soap workshop, with a sufficient supply of raw materials, we can produce 50 pieces of flower soap a day. What are you waiting for? Starting tomorrow, full production will begin immediately. After sending Burnell away, List called Sherlock of the Thorns Caravan. Have you tried the flower soap of the soap workshop? Not yet, my lord. The effect is very good. You can try it once and then summarize its benefits. I will give you a batch of flower soap. You will carry the flower soap and give it to all the nobles in North Valley City for free so that they can understand the benefits of the flower soap. Then you and Harpagon will work together to develop the sales plan for the flower soap. My lord, please rest assured that Sherlock knows what to do. List took a sip of the second cup of milk tea. I have high hopes for the flower soap. I hope you can open up the market as soon as possible and completely squeeze out ordinary soap until you monopolize the soap market on Coral Island. Sherlock hesitated and wanted to say something. List motioned him to speak. My lord, the soap business has always been the main industry of Baron Henderson of Snake Spear City. The sale of the flower soap is bound to impact Baron Henderson. Do you want to give him a heads up? If List remembered correctly, Baron Henderson had already gone to the battlefield with the Count. However, even if the other party did not go to the battlefield, List did not have to take care of the other party at all. He was the son of the Count and did business by legitimate means. No one dared to say much nonsense. If Baron Henderson went bankrupt because of this, it would be because of his poor ability to manage his territory. List could not be blamed for it. It was strange that List was not afraid. If he dared to come, List would dare to let Dosun go. Of course. Leaving no way out was a bit too much. Chapter 195. This chapter is *GGQ*. Thank you for the updates. Hit with a stick, then give a carrot. List did not exert much effort to do this. The world had vast resources, but the resources that could be controlled were limited and needed to be competed for. On the Coral Island, if List did not compete for resources and channels, he would not be able to develop. Benevolence was for the common people to hear. Plundering resources was the essence of aristocracy. Obviously, the current List was very comfortable with aristocratic identity and rules of conduct. After reminding Sherlock, he put the matter aside and no longer paid attention to it. He had mithril, crystals, jade and black pearls. Any one of them could be exchanged for a lot of gold coins. With gold coins in hand, the world was mine. There was no need to focus on one or two small businesses. Carter took the empty cup of milk tea and closed the door. The study was completely quiet. The light of the 3 crystal lamps converged, and the room was as bright as day. He opened the night novel and continued his writing until Carter knocked on the door again, reminding him that it was late at night. "I'm going to rest, Mr. Carter. You should also rest early. Good night." "Good night, master." List shook the thick bast paper on the table. There was a thick stack of serpentines written on the paper. Closing the night novel and putting it back on the bookshelf, he sorted out the paper he had written on. Looking at the densely packed characters written with a goose feather pen, he felt a sense of accomplishment. As a visitor from a civilized world, he was in a cultural and historical desert, and he always felt that something was missing. Therefore he was going to write a truly great book himself. He had the idea of writing a great book on sociology before, but he had not put it into action. Now he really started writing. Of course, he was not going to write a sociological book like Das Kapital. He intended to compile a chronicle of history based on the history and customs of various countries involved in the night novel. Confucius revised the major events recorded by the historian of the state of Lu into the Confucian classics Spring and Autumn Annals, which influenced China's values for thousands of years. He himself had become a saint of a generation. Whether he was defeated or revived, he had become one of the symbols of China's culture. After riding a dragon, List felt that he had to have a bigger dream. The Dragon Knight would only live for 100 years. After his death, he would rely on the dragon blessing for a few more generations. After that, his body and reputation would be destroyed. Once it was written into the Spring and Autumn Annals, it would be able to influence the world for thousands of years to come. Of course, the Spring and Autumn Annals was based on historical records, so List could not copy it. There was no concept of history here, not even a single history book. Based on the content of the Knight's novel, he compiled history books. It was more like he was writing Homer's epic. The Homeric epics, for the most part, are adapted by Homer from myths, folklore and street songs, but this does not prevent them from being touted as the greatest work of Greek civilization. It was as if he was flattering the official history. Perhaps after a few years, List and his dragon would disappear into thin air. The world had developed greatly and experienced all kinds of changes. There would also be people who would treat the history book he was writing now as real history. Inventing history? That was what List did, and he did it with great feeling, as if he was pointing a deer at a horse. It's a pity that there is too little information. Even if I copy the Knight's novel and make up stories, I can't fill in much of the historical gaps. I'm afraid this book will be my lifetime series. He even suspected that the book he wrote could only maintain its popularity for 3 minutes. After all, making up stories, no, recording history was very brain-consuming. Now this book doesn't have a name yet. I have to think of a name that can be passed down through the ages. In fact, it would be best to call it the Dragonlance Chronicles. The dragon and the knight's lance are very much in line with the characteristics of this world. List pondered. It was a pity that a magic shooter named Odom Truth had written a storybook called the Dragonlance Chronicles, The Dragon of Autumn. That book recorded the species of dragons and had nothing to do with history. So in his mind, names such as Dragon History, Elf Dragon History, Dragon and Elf Chronicles, Dragon Rider Chronicles, Knight Chronicles and so on emerged. But they were all rejected. Until another name came to mind. The dragon fights in the wild? He chewed on these 4 words and felt very emotional. Confucius revised the historical materials of the state of Lu, and because the historical materials were divided into 4 seasons of spring, summer, autumn and winter, it was named the Spring and Autumn Annals. In this world, dragon slayers often occur, and the battles between countries are dominated by dragons. Dragon battles in the wild. Such a title had a very charming style. Swish swish swish. Lifting the quill pen, he wrote the title of the book directly on the thick bast paper. After writing, he put all the thick bast paper into the gem space to prevent it from decaying over the years. The white paper was not ready to be developed yet, and the thick bast paper would not be kept for long. After all, this history book was a lifetime series. He resisted the ambition to continue inventing history. He got up and stretched and left the study. Just a few days after, Liszt was obsessed with making history. Under the leadership of Bernal, the soap workshop was producing flour soap at full capacity every day. Soap and soap had been forgotten in the corner. Expensive soap powder and cheap pig pancreas were constantly refined, mixed, and pressed into pieces of pink and fragrant flour soap. The finished flour soap was quickly sent to the Thorns caravan. Sherlock was a very thoughtful businessman. Old Granddad had become an official and Harpagon had taken over the huge flour caravan. Only he was still in the Thorns caravan. He was not willing to fall behind, so he spent a lot of effort on selling flour soap, trying to become famous. Let the Lord see his ability. To this end, he specially invited a carver from the North Valley City, an advanced profession of carpenter, responsible for carving exquisite patterns on wood. He asked the carver to carve a tulip on the front of the soap, and then engraved flour soap in serpentines. On the back there was a line of small serpentines, Flour Town Specialty Soap, the work of soap master Bernal. Then he also specially asked the town's carpenter shop to make a soap box containing the flour soap, with a black tulip painted on it and the name of the soap. With such a decoration, the grade of the flour soap immediately rose several levels. In this way, the flour soap is not only a piece of soap, but also a product that represents status. I believe the nobles will like it. Sherlock presented the beautifully packaged flour soap to Liszt for inspection. Unsurprisingly, it received very high praise from Liszt. The Lord also called him a natural businessman. Excitement surrounded Sherlock. He could not wait to take this batch of exquisite flour soap and visit the nobles of North Valley City under the banner of Liszt. Chapter 196. This chapter is titled Crippling Feather of Death. Soap is a standard for aristocrats, but there are differences in the degree of importance. Fastidious aristocrats like Liszt can't do without soap. Unfastidious aristocrats don't care about soap at all. Goethe is obviously an unfastidious aristocrat, judging from the fact that his hair is almost greasy. After accepting the flour soap, he just opened the box and looked at it. He asked his housekeeper to take the soap to the bathroom, and then went hunting on horseback. Time flew by and it was night. Goethe did not go back to the castle for dinner, he went drinking with the knight. His wife did not come back for dinner either, the couple were used to being outside. It was not until the moon rose that his wife withdrew from the aristocratic society and yawned back to the castle. Is the master back yet? The master hasn't come back yet, madam. All he knows is to drink outside all day. Forget it, Leah, help me with the bath. The madam complained and ordered the maid to help her prepare the bath water. A moment later she went into the bathroom. But soon she shouted again, Leah, Leah, damn it, where's my soap? Leah ran in a panic. Madam, the soap is in the wooden box on your left, she said, holding up the wooden box with the black tulip, opened the lid and revealed the pink flour soap inside. When did you change the soap? The madam frowned, her tone revealing anger. She was used to using the kind of soap with a rough surface and pinched soap powder. It was the first time she saw this kind of soap and she felt uncomfortable. Most importantly, without her permission, she had replaced the items she liked to use. Leah quickly explained, it's the master. The master received a new type of soap from Flour Town today, so he replaced it with this kind of flour soap. Sent from Flour Town? The madam was stunned, picked up the flour soap, and a handsome face that made women jealous appeared in her mind. The town of Baron Liszt, that young man always likes to tinker with something new. Okay, you go down. Leah, who left the bathroom, breathed a long sigh of relief. In the bathtub, the steam of hot water lingered. Holding the flour soap, the lady did not know what to think, and her eyes gradually blurred. She dipped the flour soap in water and began to apply it to her body. She only felt that the soap, which should have a rough friction feeling, was extremely smooth and there were a lot of bubbles directly. When women take a bath, they like the foam. She unconsciously reached out and touched her skin with the flour soap. She was over 40 years old, and her skin was gradually loose and her pores began to expand. But at this moment, under the lubrication of the flour soap, it was as delicate as a baby. It attracted her to keep stroking and rubbing on his skin. This feeling was exceptionally wonderful, and the bubbles that rose up added a lot of charm to the atmosphere. She didn't know how many times she had rubbed it, but she began to rinse the bubbles away with water. His skin was clean and clean. Candles were lit in the bathroom. The light wasn't too bright, but she could still see that her skin was fairer than usual. In particular, the feeling of cleanliness was something that couldn't be seen in the past. It was like using soap in the past only to clean the surface. Now with the flower soap, the deepest part of the skin is cleaned. I've never felt so comfortable before. She held a small piece of flower soap, and the more she looked at it, the more she liked it. It's much better than soap. I like this feeling. She used to take a bath in half an hour. This time she asked the maid to add hot water twice and washed for a whole hour. When she washed her body and wrung out her hair, even the maid who put on her pajamas felt different. "Madam, you look a lot younger tonight, it's so beautiful." It was hard to say whether the madam was beautiful or not, but when Leah touched the madam's skin she felt tight. It used to be loose, but today it became tight. The contrast was quite strong. The madam was in a good mood. "It's amazing, isn't it, Leah? It's hard to believe that a piece of flower soap made me feel young again." "Is this flower soap really so magical?" "Of course it's magical, just like List in Flower Town, full of magic. Seafood, intermediate World of Warcraft, thorn sprites, scrambled eggs and egg soup, and all kinds of bread. As many nobles say, Flower Town is a place blessed by the glory of the night." Leah had followed Madame to the Flower Town and had tasted the new food. The Flower Town is indeed a different place. After combing her hair, the madam touched her face, admired it in the crystal mirror for a moment, and then got up and left the bathroom. She called the housekeeper and said, "Remember to let the master bathe with flower soap when he comes back." "Yes, madam." Gelta came back late, still drunk, and took a bath with the help of the manservant. The servant used the flower soap for him according to the madam's instructions. However, he did not have the patience to wash himself well with the flower soap. He just hurriedly wiped himself a few times and flushed. Entering the bedroom, he saw the madam holding a thick bast paper bill, checking the income of the town's manor. He felt as if he was in a trance. His old and ugly wife seemed to give him an illusion of radiance tonight. He shook his head to get rid of the illusion. "I'll see it during the day, go to bed early." He lay in bed, reminded her, and then glanced at his wife's arm, which looked much more white and tender. He couldn't help but reach out and touch it. In an instant, the original impression of relaxation was replaced by a tight touch in his hand, and he couldn't help but make a strange "oh" sound. His body seemed to be touched. Perhaps the alcohol had played a role, but he had a long-lost libido. The hand also climbed up the already crooked mountain peak. "I'll go to sleep after I see it. What's wrong?" The madam was a little surprised by the sudden attack on her chest. Today was not the day when taxes had to be paid every month. "Nothing." Gelta said nothing, but his body did not stop and directly pressed down on his wife. Despite feeling strange, the madam did not push her husband away, but threw away the thick bast paper and began to respond to Gelta's initiative. This kind of initiative seen with the passage of time is almost rare. A few minutes later, everything was calm. Gelta rolled over and lay on the bed. He was so tired that he gasped for air and fell into a deep sleep. Beside him, the madam breathed a long sigh of relief and covered her husband with a quilt. Then, taking advantage of the aftermath that had not calmed down, she fiddled with it for a while to solve her worries and troubles. After calming down, she touched her tightened skin, and a smile appeared on the corner of her mouth. "The bathroom has to be stocked with flower soap." She turned and blew out the candle. Chapter 197. This chapter is Xian Zone. "My lord, the response to the flower soap is very strong. Many nobles have offered to buy it. Sherlock often travels between North Valley City and Flower Town. As a businessman under List, with the birth of the Thorn Sprite, his status has risen and he is now a heavyweight in the business world of North Valley City. When he got the feedback, he reported it to List. Merchants were good at reading people's expressions. Sherlock knew that this young dungeon lord might not be interested in power and worldly affairs. But he likes to have all the information and doesn't like anyone blinding his eyes. Therefore he always looks for opportunities to report to List. It seems that the flower soap has brewed a wave of good momentum, so let's do it. I look forward to seeing the flower soap dominate the soap market on Coral Island." "As you wish, my lord," Sherlock replied loudly. Sherlock is willing to devote all his strength to the lord's wishes. List looked at Sherlock, who was suspected of flattering him, and was in a good mood. "Don't let me down, Mr. Sherlock." Hearing such a title, Sherlock was even more excited. "My lord, please rest assured." After leaving the castle, he was full of ambition. He knew that with the flower soap, he would gain a position in the Lord's heart that was no less than Harpagon's, and might even be on par with old Granddad. I need people to spread the news for me. Spread the reputation of the flower soap to the 6 cities on Coral Island and every small town below. First of all, let the caravans that sell the soap understand that the flower soap can be cheaper but of better quality. Every time they sell a flower soap they can make more profit. Obviously, the flower soap could not be given away in large quantities for free. Sherlock was eager to spread his reputation and unify the market, so he decided to lower the price. Any advertising effect was not as good as letting the seller make more money. What? Flower soap, which is better than scented soap, is only 1 silver coin and 50 copper coins? A traveling merchant shouted in surprise. That's right. If you want to purchase the soap from Baron Henderson, you'll need 1 silver coin and 80 copper coins. You'll only be able to earn 20 copper coins by reselling it. But if you sell the flower soap, you will earn 50 copper coins, which is equivalent to selling 2.5 pieces of soap. You can calculate this account yourself. But is flower soap really that good? The nobles of North Valley City have already used it, and everyone is praising it. You can feel free to ask around. In addition, I have a piece of used flower soap here. I can let you try it once. Of course, the traveling merchant would not believe Sherlock's words, so he fetched some water and tried the flower soap. He roughly estimated that it can be compressed to 30 copper coins. The net profit of 1 flower soap is 1 silver coin plus 50 copper coins, and the total monthly profit reaches 60 gold coins. He can earn 2 gold coins a day. Compared to the seafood business at its peak with a net profit of nearly 4 gold coins a day, the flower soap is slightly worse, but the labor and material costs of this business are lower. Moreover, the flower soap business is led by me. Whether it is the Thorns Caravan or the Flower Caravan, they must cooperate with me. With this confidence, Sherlock met Harpagon, who had rushed over from Coral City, and discussed with him how to unify the Coral Islands market. But Sherlock never thought that Harpagon would also come prepared. The little Kerchief Island fellow squinted at him. Sherlock, your vision is too narrow. Unifying the Coral Island market is not a skill. With the advantages of the flower soap, it doesn't take much action to slowly eliminate ordinary soap. I think we should look to the outer islands and civilians. Outer islands? Civilians? Sherlock was stunned. The flower soap can be made into a specialty of Coral Island and sold to the outer islands with the help of Tulip Castle and Beer Castle. At the same time, I asked Burnell about the flower soap. But by reducing the amount of materials, we can make less effective ordinary soap, and supply it to civilians at a low cost. Harpagon smiled proudly and gave Sherlock a provocative look. I have reported to the Lord, and the Lord supports my ideas and plans. A strike. Chapter 198. Harpagon is much bolder than Sherlock. He is more far-sighted and has a fighting spirit. After Captain Costo becomes proficient in sailing, I intend to let Harpagon preside over the sea trade. Castle study at night. List and Butler Carter each had a glass of red wine, slowly tasting it and chatting about the past, present, and future. Carter's hair was a lot grayer, but his spirit was much better than when he first arrived in Flower Town. Master, isn't it too big of a step to carry out cross-sea trade now? Now I'm just using the foreign trade channels of Tulip Castle and Beer Castle to build channels belonging to Flower Town. I'm not in a hurry to take over these channels. List smiled slightly. Flower Town is only temporary. In the near future I will have my own city or island. He took a sip of red wine and went on to say, I can't always be sheltered under the wings of the family. Father may not mind, but Levis and Lytton will always have something to say. It turns out that your eyes have seen more. Master, please forgive my short-sightedness. Seeing far is one thing and doing well in the present is another. I need you to remind me often, Mr. Carter. The master and servant flattered each other, and the atmosphere was harmonious. A moment later the topic turned to flower soap. Carter was filled with emotion. I was very surprised to hear your conversation with Mr. Harpagon. I didn't expect flower soap to be so popular and occupy such a huge market. Popularity is to be expected, List said calmly. In fact, the technical content of flower soap is not great, and the decontamination effect is not heaven-defying. However, the addition of certain substances in pig pancreas and plant ash does give flower soap a lot of texture, lubrication, foam, and a skin-tightening effect. It is enough to completely defeat soap with average decontamination effect. Accustomed to ordinary soap bathing, there will be a huge contrast when it comes to flower soap. When washed clean, the whole person will naturally glow with a new brilliance. For the nobles, this is enough to make them abandon soap and switch to flower soap. As for the use of flower soap, it can also arouse the husband's sexual interest, which only Madame Gerda knows. It is estimated that no one else understands. Naturally. Under the deliberate publicity of the flower caravan, the reputation of the flower soap began to spread from North Valley City to the entire Coral Island. Coral City in particular has always been a fashion vein. The cost of the flower soap was not low, and it was impossible to give every aristocrat a trial. Instead of using Sherlock's method of casting a wide net, Harpagon placed it precisely. Miss Shirley, this is my lord, Sir Baron List. He asked me to give you a gift, 2 pieces of Flower Town's own flower soap. It's better than scented soap and more in line with your stunning beauty and noble temperament. Ah, did Big Brother List give it to me? Thank you. Shirley happily received the gift and saw that there was a thick bast paper attached to it. On the thick bast paper were serpentines written by List himself. Dear little Shirley, I have a lot of things to do in Flower Town and can't come to Coral City to see you. I can only give you 2 pieces of flower soap. May beauty always be with you, yours, Brother List. Dear Madam, Harpagon greets you. Harpagon, captain of the flower caravan, did List send you? Madam Penelope received Harpagon. Lord Baron List misses you very much. He sent me to bring you 2 pieces of Flower Town's flower soap. I hope you like it. Harpagon said respectfully, Lord Baron said that if you like it, you can always send someone to tell the caravan that the flower soap will be supplied to you free of charge. Specialty flower soap? It's a kind of soap? Madame Penelope was not a little girl like Shirley. Her eyes moved and she understood everything. This boy is getting more and more shrewd. No wonder he looks like Melissa. This shrewdness is worthy of being the grandson of Marquis Merlin. Harpagon smiled awkwardly and did not answer. He did not dare to evaluate a noble or his lord. Madame Penelope said, Well, I accept the gift. If they are really good, I will put in a good word for him. At least my old face knows a lot of people. Once again Harpagon will take his leave. The flower soap was undoubtedly completing its impact on the soap market. This was a big deal for Sherlock and Harpagon, but for List, it was just a way to make money and give advice to his subordinates. Now he had a new task. Just this afternoon the smoke changed. Task completed, reward 5 rotten bones. It was not hard to guess that Marcus and others on Black Horse Island had already built a temporary stronghold on the island and settled 100 serfs. A new task was also born. Task: raising horses requires a large number and variety of pasture. Black Horse Island is not suitable for growing more pasture at present. Why not cultivate corn grass in Flower Town to increase nutrition for the black-blooded horse herd? Please cultivate 100 acres of corn grass. Reward: a sprite worm. The task of rewarding sprite worms must be completed. Every sprite worm is a treasure. But when List saw the content of the task, he frowned deeply. He called the barley settlement steward. Gajiel, how many acres of corn grass are currently planted in the barley settlement? Sir Lord, there are a total of 30 acres of corn grass. Is the corn grass now cultivated? Can it germinate and safely survive the winter? This? Gajiel hesitated. Sir Lord, Gajiel has not taken care of the corn grass in the winter and does not know if it can survive the winter. So how many corn grass seeds have you harvested? The seeds have been handed in to the administrative office, about a few hundred pounds. Much of the corn grass is directly cut down for grazing, and only a small part is used for seeds. List looked at the weather outside. It was almost late autumn and the weather was no longer warm. Such a climate was not suitable for farming crops, but the smoke task was placed here. Otherwise it would be difficult to ensure the birth of a sprite worm. He was sure that this was a corn grass sprite worm, but it was hard to say whether it could be bred or not. It depended on the progress of the task. No matter how difficult it was, he had to do it. He immediately ordered, immediately reclaim 70 acres of land and expand the corn grass field to 100 acres. Gajiel, hurry up. Yes, Sir Lord. Gajiel will arrange for everyone to reclaim the new land. The task began. On the other side, List also took the time to explore the barley settlement's corn grass field. He constantly released magic eyes in an attempt to find signs of a sprite worm being bred. As long as he found signs of a sprite worm, even if the task failed, he was confident that he could breed a sprite worm. Unfortunately, he did not see any signs of magic power. The corn grass field was filled with ordinary corn grass, and there was nothing special about it. He sighed and comforted himself. I hope the corn grass can germinate in this weather. Let me complete the task first. The next day the flower returned. Marcus brought him a piece of news regarding the task reward. Chapter 199. What kind of bone do you think it is? List asked curiously. The height of an ordinary person is about 1.7 meters, that is to say, the diameter of each of the 5 bones is greater than 1.7 meters. One can imagine how long they would be and how big the skeleton would be. Marcus unconsciously turned his head and looked at the door as if to make sure that no one was eavesdropping behind the door, and then replied in a measured tone, "I think it might be dragon bones." Dragon bones. List was shocked, then suppressed his surprise and excitement and asked his doubts, "If it is dragon bones, is there any mineral deposits in that valley?" It seems that no mineral deposits were found. We dug the bones a few meters deep until we were blocked by rocks. We did not find metal-like nor did we find crystals or gems. Really? Dragons can infect their surroundings. If it is the bones of a metal dragon or gem dragon, I am afraid that the whole island will become a mine. Since it has not become a mine, it means that the bones should not be the remains of a metal dragon or gem dragon. Marcus guessed, maybe it is the bones of an elemental dragon? An elemental dragon is also unlikely. I talked to Elkson and he read a book written by an archmage. It recorded that the magic of an elemental dragon is long-lasting and will also infect its surroundings. The roaring wind valley of the Empire of Light was formed after the Battle of the Wind Dragon, and the wind is still roaring today. After several discussions, the species of the bones during their lifetime has ruled out the possibility of dragons. Could it be Super Dragon World of Warcraft? Marcus raised another possibility. I have only heard of Advanced Dragon World of Warcraft, but no matter how big Advanced World of Warcraft is, it is impossible for a bone to be 1.7 meters in diameter. So I guess it is Super Dragon World of Warcraft, but it seems to be a legendary species. World of Warcraft is divided into low, intermediate, advanced, and super. In fact, the division between Advanced World of Warcraft and Super Warcraft is very vague. Because there are not many individuals observed and there is no standard, whether to distinguish between advanced and super by combat power or by body shape. Basically, humans are not willing to provoke the powerful World of Warcraft. And according to rumors, there was not a single World of Warcraft in the Grand Duchy of Sapphire. The continent was boundless and World of Warcraft would only appear in night tales. The Earl had invaded the Eagle Kingdom every year and had seen many things, but he had never heard of Super Warcraft in the Eagle Kingdom. Not to mention the Super Dragon-type magical beast. At the level of World of Warcraft, the bloodline was infinitely powerful. Being infected by a dragon was only a theoretical possibility. After discussing for a long time, the two of them still couldn't come up with any clues. They couldn't guess what kind of creature had left those 5 huge bones behind. Tomorrow, I will personally go to Black Horse Island to see what is so wonderful about these 5 bones. He left as soon as he said he would. He instructed the town's officials to urge the Barley Settlement's serfs to cultivate corn grass. List took a boat directly, took Dosen and went to Black Horse Island with Marcus. After sailing for half a day, they reached their destination without a hitch. A simple dock had been built, made of wood suspended on the sea, and it was a little shaky when walking on it. As for Dosen, he had to take a wooden boat. His overweight physique was not something the floating dock could bear. After landing, he saw a row of brand new wooden houses standing no more than 100 meters from the dock. There were serfs clearing gravel and weeds around. It was a very simple stronghold. But this meant that List had gained a firm foothold on Black Horse Island. Without delay, while there was still time, he went straight to the valley where the 5 big bones were found. On the way he happened to meet the Black Blood horse herd. The Horse King was a little unfamiliar with List, but when List rode it he quickly became familiar with it. Carrying List, he sprinted and turned back along the way. On the way, Marcus reported to him on his inspection of Black Horse Island these days. There is no World of Warcraft on the island, at least no World of Warcraft has been found so far. There are only some small carnivores and herbivores, and the largest animal is the Black Blood horse. The vegetation is also very monotonous, there are few trees and most of them are miscellaneous trees. No one knows this kind of miscellaneous tree and there are not many branches. He pointed to a tree on the side of the road. This tree was the miscellaneous tree he mentioned. The trunk was very straight, the branches were high and it was not lush. It had no flowers or fruits and it did not grow tall. The leaves were slightly yellow, and it seemed to be a deciduous tree. It was ordinary. Marcus continued, there are many weeds on the island. In addition to the pasture grass on the pasture, the rest are common weeds. The black blood horse does not eat these weeds, so getting rid of them is the best choice. Finally he added, Sir, I am drawing a map of Black Horse Island, but it is not finished yet. List suddenly asked, Have you chosen the place to build the castle? Not yet, there are not many defensive terrains on the island. The hills are not high and the terrain is not steep. It is impossible to build a steep castle like Tulip Castle, which may not even be comparable to the terrain of Beer Castle. I think that if you really want to build a castle you can only build it on flat ground, thicken the walls and dig a moat. Not every castle can be backed against a cliff, and most castles are built on flat ground. List was simply concerned. Soon the group came to the valley where the 5 bones were found under the setting sun. This valley was located between the ice grass mound and the needle grass mound. Because the weeds were deep and the bones were buried deep, it was difficult to find. I was inspecting the terrain while riding the Black Devil, which was how I found these remains and these 5 bones. Marcus patted the Black Devil under him and went to the center of the valley where weeds had been shoveled away. Behind him was a large pit that had just been dug. In the center of the pit, a huge gray-white broken bone was inserted obliquely into the ground. Around it were 4 huge bones with a small section exposed, and bone fragments scattered on the ground. It looked like some kind of creature had died here. With the weathering of time, most of the bones had gradually decayed, leaving only these 5 bones still standing, but they should also have decayed. The reward of the smoke mission clearly indicated that these were 5 decayed bones. List dismounted. Approaching the pit, stepping on the rocks at the bottom of the pit, List approached the bones step by step. The closer he got to the bones, the more he felt small, as if he was standing in front of a huge stone pillar. He reached out and touched the surface of the bones, which was as hard as rock. When he knocked on it, he could hear a stone-like sound. List cast magic eyes to observe the 5 bones and the bone fragments on the ground. No traces of magic were found. This bone should have become a fossil, right? But he quickly shook his head. Fossils were integrated with the stone, and this bone obviously still had a part exposed. Teacher Marcus, have you examined the bone fragments on the ground? Hard, suitable for making fine bone tools. Marcus responded briefly. Fine bone tools, enough to show the quality of the bones at least at the low-level World of Warcraft level. Bang bang bang. List knocked the bones again. For a time, apart from being shocked, he was left scratching his head. He didn't know what the smoke mission reward of these 5 bones was for. Chapter 200. This chapter is a reward for the leader. Big ears attract wind. At present, there are still a total of 20 chapters owed to the leader. As for other chapters, they will be slowly filled up in Old White's heart. The 5 huge skeletons left behind by the unknown creatures definitely had unusual uses, but List hadn't discovered them yet. He wanted to put the bones into the space gem, but unfortunately the bones were too big to fit. Besides, they were inserted into the rock and could not be pulled out. Teacher Marcus, remember to arrange for people to dig them out if they can. If they can't, then protect them in place. Understood. In addition, send someone to pick up the bone fragments on the ground and transport them back to Flower Town with the flour. It just so happens that I plan to open a bonesmith shop in Flower Town. Marcus nodded and said, These bone fragments are indeed suitable for making excellent bone tools. With the number of fragments here, the serfs of Flower Town will no longer lack farming tools, and the patrols and insect protection teams can also get 2 more bone weapons. Speaking of bone tools, List suddenly remembered that there was a keel bone in his gem space. According to Costo, the keel bone should be made from the bones of a high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft. Teacher Marcus, do you remember the keel bone? He patted the huge bone and said, The keel bone is said to be the bones of a high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft, but compared to the bones in front of us, there is a world of difference. I think the gap between the super dragon species in World of Warcraft and the high-level dragon species in World of Warcraft should not be so huge. This denied the previous speculation. Marcus obviously also thought of it and frowned. Dragons are denied, and the super dragon species in World of Warcraft is also denied, so what kind of creature left these 5 bones? In a short period of time, there was no answer to this question. As the sun was about to set, the group had to leave the valley and return to the temporary stronghold. There was no need to sleep on the ship at night, and Dosen was dragged far away by List. There was no snoring and he could rest quietly for the night. But he was lying on a hardwood bed. List did not sleep immediately, he was still thinking about the bones. 5 decayed bones, which means that it's been around for a long time, and that it's a super powerful creature. Apart from dragons, The only other creature that fit this description was the legendary super dragon race in World of Warcraft. According to the classification of meddlesome magical creatures, the super dragon species in World of Warcraft is second only to dragons. In many Night novels, the super dragon race in World of Warcraft frequently appeared. But they have another name, Yalong. All the other low-level dragons in World of Warcraft had the same name, Draconic Beast. There were even some Night novels that believed that dragons were also a type of World of Warcraft and forcefully classified them as wyverns. They even forcefully grouped wyverns, lesser dragons, and draconic beasts together and classified them as one species. This undoubtedly belittled the noble bloodline of dragons, so this type of Night novel was not popular and belonged to a niche category. List didn't agree either. He wanted to ride a dragon even in his dreams. Telling him that dragons were just a form of World of Warcraft was an insult to his lofty ideals. This kind of Night novel should be listed as a banned book. So, it's not a dragon nor is it a lesser dragon. What are the 5 bones? The thoughts in his mind were mixed and all kinds of ideas kept emerging. Then he paused for a moment to analyze whether it was right or wrong. The lesser dragon is World of Warcraft. It's hard to say whether it exists or not. It should be ruled out first. I have ruled out the gem dragon, the metal dragon, and the elemental dragon, but there is still the holy dragon. Could it be the smoke dragon? He suddenly thought of his golden finger, the smoke quest that was linked to fate. He always thought that the smoke quest was the product of the smoke dragon. But he was more inclined to contact the smoke dragon when he was a child and then was infected by the smoke dragon. But now, a new idea arose. If the smoke dragon died, its magic infected me and formed a smoke quest? And it died on Black Horse Island and infected a group of black-blooded horses? The idea could not be said to be illogical and reasonable. But when he thought about it carefully, there were some things that did not conform to common sense. After all, the bones had decayed and maybe thousands of years had passed. There was no reason for it to suddenly infect a little kid on the neighboring Coral Island. In the memory of his predecessor, he had not been to other islands except Red Crab Island and Beer Island. Not to mention Black Horse Island, which had just been discovered. Moreover, the description of the smoke dragon generally said that it was a cloud of smoke, and there was no such thing as bones or flesh. After death, it would probably disappear directly. There was no reason to leave such a skeleton behind. It shouldn't be the smoke dragon, and the invisible dragon doesn't match either. The invisible dragon is very small. Fairy dragon? No, the fairy dragon has an infinite lifespan and can't die. Dusk dragon? Emerald dragon? He still couldn't figure it out. After one night. At dawn the next day, he rode lightning again and came to the valley to observe the bones. The serfs who lived on Black Horse Island soon arrived in teams and began to pick up every piece of bone on the ground, packed it, and transported it to the temporary stronghold. Marcus took another team and began to dig up the other 4 bones to see if they could dig them out and see the whole picture of the bones. These bones, although not fossilized, did lose part of the nature of bones. Dosen, a fellow who loved to eat bones, had no interest in the bone fragments on the ground. He followed behind List, eyeing the Horse King Lightning covetously, saliva dripping to the ground. The Horse King Lightning was dismissive of Dosen and leisurely gnawed on the grass roots on the ground. Not far away, the black-blooded horses were grazing on the hillside. From time to time, the black-blooded horses raised their heads and looked in the direction of Lightning. They still followed Lightning's lead. Sir, halfway through the second bone, we encountered a rock layer and couldn't dig any further. Marcus came over and reported. It seems that there are rocks under the soil of this Black Horse Island. List walked to the new pit, jumped to the bottom of the pit and stepped on the solid rock. He squatted down and reached out to brush the dirt off the rock, trying to get a closer look at what kind of rock it was. However, he didn't know much about rocks. He just felt that this kind of stone was harder and seemed to have dense holes on it like bubbles. Bubbles? Suddenly he felt that he remembered something, but he couldn't grasp this inspiration. So he told the serfs who were preparing to dig the third bone, "Expand this pit, I want to see more rocks." He didn't believe that the rock layer would be a whole piece of rock. There must be a fracture, and he could pry open a piece and study it carefully. Sure enough, after the serfs expanded the bare surface of the rock at the bottom of the pit, List saw the gaps between the rocks. However, as the bottom of the pit was constantly expanded and the soil was removed, more and more rock surfaces were exposed. He was surprised to find that these rocks were very orderly, like a wash basin-sized hexagon. And there was a high and low distribution between the rocks like a staircase in a row. Chapter 201. Before List crossed over, he was fascinated by an American TV series called Game of Thrones. There was a very magnificent building in it, the Great Wall. With the help of giants, humans built a 300-mile-long 700-foot-high ice wall. At first, he was very interested in the Great Wall, so he looked up a lot of information and knew that the original shape of the Great Wall was a cliff formed by a basalt pillar in the west of Iceland. Because of this, he learned about the great wonders of nature like the basalt pillar. The Giant's Causeway in Ireland, the Devil's Tower in the United States, the Fingal Cave in Scotland, and the Gezi Mountain Pillar Forest in Nanjing are all typical basalt pillars. It is hard to believe that the neatly arranged stone pillars originated from volcanic eruptions. When the volcano erupts magma, it cools to form basalt with pores and gradually shrinks, and the cracks form a very regular geometric shape. In most cases, it forms a hexagonal shape as if it has been co-processed. This is a basalt pillar, no doubt about it. With the continuous excavation of the pit, the appearance of the basalt pillar was revealed little by little. The orderly hexagonal stone pillars revealed their true faces one by one. Costo, who was following behind Liszt, suddenly shouted, "I remember now. My lord, I remember now. I've seen this kind of rock on an island." "What island?" "An uninhabited island that I encountered on the voyage to Deep Throat Island. The whole island is densely packed with stone pillars, the shape of which is the same as the stone pillars here." Costo's words supported Liszt's judgment. The rock under his feet was a basalt pillar, a geological structure formed by volcanic eruptions. Looking at the huge skeleton again, he suddenly thought of a possibility. He thought silently, maybe my previous judgment was wrong. This is not the wreckage of a dragon. Maybe this is the wreckage of a fire dragon. Wind dragons can form wind-roaring valleys with strong winds all year round. Fire dragons can naturally form volcanoes. If it was a fire dragon that fell here at the last moment of its life, with its magic, it would definitely form a volcanic eruption, and the body of the fire dragon would be engulfed by the volcano. As time passed, perhaps after tens of thousands of years, the magic of the fire dragon gradually dissipated, the volcano died, and the upper layer was gradually weathered or blown by the wind, forming the present Black Horse Island. Black Horse Island does not look like a volcanic island. However, Liszt felt that it was very reasonable. This place might have originally been deep in the sea, but because of the fire dragon's fall, the volcano continued to erupt layer by layer, and finally broke through the seawater, revealing the surface of the sea. If I dive down now and spy on the shore-based situation under the seawater of Black Horse Island, it might look like a huge volcano. The exposed Black Horse Island is just part of the crater. You don't say, it really does look a little similar. Ice grass mound, needle grass mound, alfalfa mound, and sheepgrass mound are arranged in the shape of a mouth, forming a low-lying valley that fits the structure of a volcanic crater. The location of the bones is between the needle grass mound and the ice grass mound, not far from the crater of the volcano. Perhaps the fire dragon's bones were brought out by the volcanic eruption. Thinking like this, even if the magic I could not observe the fire attribute magic. Liszt also gradually felt that the fire-attributed aura in his body was becoming restless, as if the fire-attributed mana here was very active. Of course, this was an illusion. After calming down, he did not find this sign, and the restlessness of his aura also calmed down. I think a little too much. After tens of thousands of years of grinding, I am afraid that except for these bones of the fire dragon, everything else has been lost. Dragon. Fire dragon. Liszt stood up, stepped on the basalt pillar and approached the bones. He reached out and stroked the rough surface of the bones. There were too many complex and unspeakable emotions in his heart that he wanted to vent. I have a destiny with dragons. Invisible dragons, smoke dragons, and fire dragons. Ordinary people rarely see them, but I have encountered them one after another. It seems that I am destined to ride a dragon in this life. Unfortunately, it was not a metal dragon or a gem dragon that fell here, leaving no metal or gem mineral deposits. But thinking about it, if it was a metal dragon or a gem dragon without volcanic eruptions, Black Horse Island would probably just be a piece of mud at the bottom of the sea. No matter how rich the mineral deposits were, Liszt would not be able to touch them. Everything he saw had a reason. He thought again, the fire dragon fell here. If it was not killed by him, then the existence of the Valley of the Dragon should be ruled out. The Dragon Spear Chronicles, the Dragon of Late Autumn, recorded that when a dragon is old, it will fly to the Valley of the Dragon. There was only an ocean here, there was no Valley of the Dragon. At this time, Marcus, who was in charge of supervising the work, put forward an idea. Sir, I am guessing that since there are 5 bones embedded in these stones, does it mean that there are more bones also embedded in the stones? Is it just that the parts that are exposed to the surface have decayed into pieces? It makes sense. It seems that I have to carefully clean up this bone burial ground. Liszt suddenly felt that his brainwave of naming was very stylish. This is called the bone burial ground. If you have free time, you can flatten the surface and see how many bones you can collect. The bones of the fire dragon, even if they have decayed, are still very hard and are excellent materials. The upcoming bone shop does not have to worry about the lack of suitable raw materials. After figuring out the origin of the bones in the bone burial ground, Liszt felt that there was no need to study it any further. So early the next morning, he set off from Black Horse Island under the illumination of the rising red sun. Of course, he brought back a batch of bone fragments. He had to continue to think about what these bones could be used for besides making bone tools. He always felt that it was a huge waste to use dragon bones to make tools for serfs to farm. After returning to Flower Town, he saw Elk Sun Truth again. The magician came to Flower Town to make the next batch of Valley of Fire magic potions. Liszt had a brainwave and handed him a bone fragment. Mr. Elk Sun, I recently found a ruin and found a few pieces of bone. Please help me study it and see what kind of creature it belongs to and what kind of use it has. It doesn't matter if the bones have decayed for tens of thousands of years, even if the secret of the dragon bone is exposed. The important thing is to understand its function. Elk Sun took the bone fragment and nodded. You can rest assured that I will study it when I have free time. In addition, Lord Baron, you asked me to buy a batch of magician's books. I have brought them. There are a total of 56 books. As for the night novels, you can let the caravan buy them. Knowledge, Liszt was eager for it. He wanted to write a chronicle history book of dragons fighting in the wild, and needed a lot of plagiarism, a lot of reference materials. Mages who pursued the truth and refused to lie wrote books that were relatively truthful and broad in content, which had high reference value. Thank you very much. I will let Mr. Carter pay for the books as soon as possible. Chapter 202. Magic books are not the same as night novels. Night novels are stories created by fallen nobles in order to earn a living and for a large number of readers, in pursuit of fun, refreshment, and bizarreness. Magic books are very similar to papers, mainly research reports and experimental notes of the magician. Most of the magic books are poorly readable, and some are even upside down and logically confusing. And the printing quality is relatively poor, and even many magic books are circulated in manuscripts. Not many people are willing to buy them, and naturally there is no money to pay publishers to print them. 56 magic books sent by Elk Sun. 21 of them are manuscripts. The Diary of 18 Kinds of Red Viper Venom Extraction on Red Mamba Island, Sleep Truth, is this kind of book really worth reading? He looked at the manuscript in his hand and felt that it was a bit of a loss. Such a book cost 2 silver coins. Forget it, I'll just buy an instruction manual on snake venom. After a few pages, he lost patience and stuffed the book into the gem space. He continued to open the next manuscript. Frito's Fireball, a book about how to release fireball and improve the craft of fireball. The author, Fredo Truth, turned out to be a magic apprentice, and the only magic he knew was fireball. The book recorded that in order to expand his fireball, he tried more than 100 casting directions. Eventually, he completed the improvement of fireball, making it possible to rub the fireball with the back of his hand. He called this improvement an epic making progress, and believed that he would promote the advent of the magic age. Unfortunately, this was a second-hand book, and there was another magician's afterthought in the back of the book. The magician left a disdainful sneer. When you advance to a magician, you will understand that any part of the body can be used as a casting medium, the only difference is that the palm of the hand casts faster. So this book is a negative teaching material? Liszt was quite speechless and threw it directly into the gem space. Looking back and forth, most of the handwritten magic books are more exotic experimental content, which is of little value and is more suitable to be used as a table foot. When he turned to the last manuscript, he suddenly raised his eyebrows. The title of the book was Kennedy's Alchemy Diary. Another alchemy diary. Liszt instantly remembered the shipwrecked treasure he had obtained. There was also an alchemy diary in the chest. It seemed to be called Rudolph's Alchemy Diary, and it was also handwritten with serpentines on the cover. It seems like it's also a handwritten magic book. Restraining his emotions, he began to flip through the diary. The author was a magician who had just advanced. He used many methods to guide magic, trying to turn a stone into gold under the influence of magic. For this reason, he even melted the 7 gold coins he had in order to observe the difference between gold coins and stones. In the end, he still couldn't figure out how to turn stones into gold. Therefore, this was also a negative teaching material for continuous failure. Closing the book, Liszt got up directly, went to the Valley of Fire workshop and found Elksun. Do magicians like to study alchemy? Elksun put down his work and explained, Baron Liszt, the triangle theory is a recognized truth among magicians, so we always hope to find the most direct evidence to prove the truth of this theory. The Midas touch is the best proof. What? Because the process of turning stone into gold can be broken down into two sets of steps. First, the material stone is transformed into spirit with the help of magic, and then the spirit is transformed into material gold with the help of magic. Therefore, turning stone into gold will strictly verify the correctness of the triangle theory, which is one of the ideals that we magicians pursue all our lives. In that case, Liszt felt a little contradictory. Has the Midas touch ever been successful? I don't know, but many magicians believe that there were real alchemists in ancient times who could turn stone into gold. Why do you have to choose to turn stone into gold? If you want to verify the triangle theory, isn't it possible to refine the properties of other items? Elksun smiled. Baron Liszt, your understanding may be off. Alchemy is just a general term, and turning stone into gold is one of the popular ones. Because we magicians need a lot of money to do experiments, we all like to study turning stone into gold and want to get enough wealth. He spread his hands a little helplessly. But it's not that no one has refined other items, it's just that no one has succeeded. When I first became a magician, I chose to study alchemy, but I gave up in the end. Liszt roughly understood what alchemy was all about. Slightly disappointed, Liszt then asked, So, many magicians create an alchemy diary? Yes. Well, you continue to work, I won't bother you anymore. He was just about to go out when he turned around again. Have you studied the bone fragment I gave you? I haven't had time to study it yet. Study it as soon as possible. I'm curious about this kind of fragment. Of course, as long as I have time. He shook the crystal tube in his hand, meaning that he needed to make the Valley of Fire magic potion first. Back in the castle, Liszt sighed in his heart. Because of the decay of Rudolph's alchemy diary, the knot in his heart has disappeared. It turns out that magicians like to tinker with alchemy and write alchemy diaries. If it was really refined, it would not be circulated in the form of a manuscript. That magician would become a sacred and inviolable existence in the hearts of all magicians, side by side with the sun. Perhaps the Dragon Knight would fight over him. The knot in his heart dissipated. Although he felt relaxed, it also showed that alchemy was probably just a beautiful imagination. Countless magicians studied alchemy one after another, but ultimately did not get any useful information, which showed the difficulty of alchemy. Getting rich overnight was still a dream. For him, it also meant that the dream was shattered. After a moment of entanglement, he quickly adjusted his mentality. Forget it, I am not a magician, why would I study alchemy? He threw Kennedy's alchemy diary into the gem space. Liszt continued to read the next magic book. He had finished reading the manuscript, and the rest were printed copies. There were 3 possibilities for a printed magic book. One was that the author was rich and printed it at his own expense. The second was that the book was valuable and the magician was willing to buy it. And the third was that the book was interesting and the aristocrats were willing to buy it. Wild Sprite Worm Market Selling Price, Blind Windblade Wolf King, How to Safely Cross the Mid-Oro Mangrove Forest, Highland White Tower, Carrick Truth. These magic books were obviously of much better quality than the manuscript. Liszt picked up one of them, Wild Sprite Worm Market Selling Price, and read it with relish. The magician who wrote the book lived in Steel City, the capital of the Steel Ridge Kingdom. There was a large wild sprite trading market, and the magician went to the market every day to observe the wild sprites. Liszt couldn't help but feel a sense of respect every time he saw her. Sometimes he thought like an animal. He was the only master in the castle, so he could do whatever he wanted. Why not pounce on him? However, he still calmed his restlessness and turned this impulse into motivation to cultivate his Do Chi. Flame Dragon Drill and Waves of Flames had already been deeply memorized. Every move was executed without pause. He also gradually became familiar with Multiple Arrow, and he was already at masterful mastery of Dual Arrow. He was not far from masterful mastery of Triple Arrow either. He was still a bit away from mastering Multiple Arrow, but he was close to mastering ultimate level Multiple Phantom Arrow. When I finish mastering Multiple Phantom Arrow, it will be the moment when Multiple Arrow completely surpasses Marcus. Liszt held the bow and arrow in his hand, his eyes sharp, staring at the target 100 meters away. His left hand held 3 arrows and his mouth held 3 arrows. Wind speed, humidity, gravity acceleration, Dochi adhesion, calculation complete shoot. The wind whistled. The 3 arrows were like 3 rays of light side by side. His hands didn't stop moving. He plucked the 3 arrows from his mouth, put them on the bowstring and shot. The 6 arrows followed one another. Because of their different speeds, they quickly intertwined and completed a complex collision. They all turned and changed their flying angles. Then the 6 arrows seemed to hit the center of the target at the same time. Steadily the arrowheads disappeared. I didn't miss the target. List was startled and then became ecstatic. I didn't miss the target. I completed multiple phantom arrow. My archery has already surpassed Marcus. I, List Tulip, have already ascended to the position of divine archer. After the pleasant surprise, he felt a sense of defeat. In the flower town, his fighting strength was at another level. He was an extraordinary Earth Knight. Even in the entire Coral Island, he was among the top 10 knight. I am afraid that Levis is no longer my opponent. He is just a pampered elite Earth Knight. Although I have never been on the battlefield, but my archery is superior. Divine Archer meant that his fighting strength was far superior to that of an ordinary knight. However, considering that Levis was gaining experience on the battlefield, he decided to use Marcus as a comparison. An elite Earth Knight like Marcus represented the vast majority of knights who couldn't afford to take drugs. The only way they could improve their fighting strength was by constantly polishing their fighting skills. My total amount of chi has already surpassed Marcus by a large margin. My archery has also surpassed his. I still have the red blood sword to increase the power of the chi secret manual. He pulled out the red blood sword with a clang. List looked up at the sky at a 45-degree angle and whispered, I want to fight 10 of such Marcus. Marcus was still on Black Horse Island and could not fight with List, but there were still 2 Earth Knights in Flower Town, Rondo Kettle and Russell Steele. You will train with me in actual combat. Rondo will go first. Yes, Lord Baron. Rondo answered seriously. He was older than List, so he was not very nervous. On the contrary, he looked a little relaxed. After all, in everyone's impression, List had only broken through to the Earth Knight level for more than half a year. Although he was relying on Trembling Woods to show off his might, his own combat power was probably limited. Even if he was riding on a divine horse, there was nothing to fear. Are you ready, Rondo? Lord Baron, I can start at any time. Then Russell, you are in charge of the referee. Yes, Lord Baron. Rondo, please listen to my command. Russell said loudly, in the name of the Knight's glory, get ready, start. With a command, List and Rondo, who were 100 meters apart, each drove their mounts and began to charge. At this moment, Rondo was relaxed. He had a lot of actual combat experience. List, on the opposite side, was a little nervous. After all, it was his first actual combat exercise and his body was a little tense. He took a deep breath. He waved the knight's spear, and when the 2 sides were about to pass each other, he stabbed fiercely, Fire Dragon Sweep. Bang! The knight's spear burst into flames, and his moves were fierce, colliding with Rondo's knight's spear. Then the flames dissipated, and the 2 spears were swung away. Rondo's body shook a little on the horse's back and soon stabilized. List did not shake his body, but his hand holding the knight's spear was almost twisted by the recoil. Because he was nervous, he did not control his strength well, and half of the recoil came from his own strength. I made a mistake. His heart was clear. Although he was annoyed by this low-level mistake, his nervousness dissipated a lot. Rondo's strength is much weaker than I thought, or rather, my strength is far beyond his. An elite Earth Knight against an ordinary Earth Knight should have a crushing momentum. He figured this out. He no longer had any nervousness and suddenly shouted, again. They had no choice but to respect him. I'm stronger than I thought. I've always underestimated myself. He was delighted. On the surface, List did not show it. The soul of an adult knew how to restrain his emotions. He just said lightly, since leaving the Knight Academy, I have not had actual combat training with anyone. We did not show all our strength in the battle just now. This time you 2 come together, let's train again. Yes, Lord Baron. The 2 responded in unison. Then a battle of 1 against 2 began and the double attack hit. List was also flustered at first. But the gap in strength was too obvious. After 2 rounds of charging, he adapted to the double attack. A steel knight spear waved flames all over the sky. Clang, clang. After 2 blows, Randy and Russell each flew again and fell heavily to the ground. The two of them were not enough to pose a threat to List. After the two got up, List did not show the joy of victory. He still had the usual standard aristocratic smile. That's all for today's training. You have just arrived in Flower Town and don't have enough team members to practice together. For the time being, polish your fighting spirit. If you want to go to the battlefield, there is indeed a gap in your level. Both of them more or less had the heart to pick up beans. They felt that Flower Town was short of people. If they joined early, they could follow and pick up the credit. But today's training made them realize that if they were not strong enough, they would not get a good result no matter where they went. Putting away the frivolity in his heart, he solemnly responded, "Yes, Lord Baron." They had not yet chosen their allegiance, and similarly, List had not accepted them. Whether they could establish a master-follower relationship in the future depended on their performance. Judging from their current performance, List really looked down on them. Of course, he did not directly deny the two. He intended to wait for Marcus to come back and fight with Marcus to see how strong he was. Marcus's combat effectiveness had clearly reached the level of Coral Island's elite knight. The Count had assigned him to guard List and serve as List's tutor because of this. Therefore, Marcus could be used as a yardstick. Everyone dispersed. They returned. This was a battle. It may not be too enjoyable, but the process was hearty. After taking a bath, List leaned back in the living room chair, recalling the details of the battle and thinking about where to improve. Good at summarizing can better find out their own shortcomings, improve and make progress. When recalling, he may be a little distracted. The smoke mission quietly emerged and quickly attracted List's attention. Mission completed, reward a corngrass sprite worm. There was no surprise reward, no surprise corngrass sprite worm. It seems that the work of cultivating 100 acres of corngrass has been completed. Very good, corngrass sprite worm, my 10th sprite worm. No, it's the 9th sprite worm. The thorn sprite worm has evolved into a thorn's lesser sprite. He waved his hand. A new smoke mission had been issued. Mission: haven't you eaten enough barbecue and seafood? As a noble lord, the diet must be nutritious. How can there be no chicken, fish and eggs? This year's grain harvest, please raise more than 1,000 chickens in Flower Town to provide enough eggs and chicken. Reward: special mineral load. Ha! Special mineral load? List was pleasantly surprised. The reward is a mineral load. The last reward was a super small saltpeter mine, and this time it is a special mineral load. I don't know what kind of mineral load it is. By the way, is it related to the basalt pillars? He could think that the main body of Black Horse Island composed of basalt pillars was probably related to the mineral load. Perhaps the special mineral load was buried in these basalt pillars. Whatever it is. Chapter 205. With magic eyes, as long as a sprite worm was born, List could not escape his eyes. The corngrass sprite worm also did not escape his observation. At the edge of the cornfield, there was an inconspicuous corngrass with faint traces of magic power on its ears. I finally found you. Grow up quickly and work for me. After List confirmed it, he immediately summoned Insect Officer Rome Winebarrel and told him, "This corngrass is in the process of brewing a corngrass sprite worm. Remember to arrange insect guards to watch over it day and night. Don't make any mistakes." "Rest assured, sir, Rome will personally take care of it. The corngrass sprite worm will definitely be nurtured smoothly without any disturbance." Rome replied happily. Witnessing the birth of a new sprite worm had become a daily occurrence in the Flower Town. This was indeed a place blessed by the glory of the night. List then ordered the barley settlement steward, Gajeel, "Don't forget to fertilize and water the cordyceps. If there are any signs of disease or wilting, inform me immediately." As long as there was adequate nutrition and meticulous care, the gestation of a sprite worm would normally take 10 days to half a month. Most of them suffered from dystocia or miscarriage due to various reasons such as not being discovered or not being nurtured properly. But in the Flower Town there was no such problem. 1 lesser sprite and 9 sprite worms. The number of sprites in my territory is about to catch up with Elvira. He thought happily. Surpassing her was only a matter of time. When Elvira was in theft, she received a tulip lesser sprite and 12 sprite worms. In the following 3 years she lost a sprite worm, but 2 more sprite worms were born in her territory. Therefore she now had 13 sprite worms. The maintenance of these elves allowed Falcon Town to remain prosperous. However, Falcon Town's potential was far inferior to Flower Town's. There was no monopoly business that could bring cash flow, such as seafood and flower soap. There was no rich variety of potions. She only had the tulip potion, which was the black tulip given to her by List. There was no intermediate World of Warcraft or Dragon Horse. Even if she trained a knight squad, it would be an ordinary team. Flower Town had black blood horses, and the knight squad formed in the future would definitely be comparable to an elite team like the Coral City Orders of Chivalry. Of course, Lavera was not List's goal. He did not want to compare himself with a woman. He cared more about when he could surpass Levis. Levis broke through the Earth Knight realm before he reached adulthood. His talent was praised, but I have already caught up. I am also an elite Earth Knight. Now my goal is the same as his, to advance to a Sky Knight. The path of potions was smooth, which made List full of pride. The Sky Knight is easy for me. The Count is called the Wave Sword Saint by the people of the Eagle Kingdom. In the future, I will be known as the Flame Sword Saint. The knight mainly used a gun to charge on horseback. In a one-on-one fight, the sword was the main weapon. Sky Knights no longer needed to charge together with the main force. A single person and a single sword could sweep away an ordinary group of 100 knights. That was why they called themselves Sword Saints and were known as Sword Saints. Now, the future Flame Sword Saint List Tulip was heading to the office to convene a meeting of the town's officials. Advisor Gort and everyone, I intend to promote farmers' chicken farming in Flower Town. He was too lazy to make excuses for his ideas. He directly ordered what the smoke mission required. Anyway, no one dared to question him. In the next half a month, the scale of breeding should reach 1,500. Raising chickens was not a simple job, and the mortality rate was not low. This had to be taken into account. After a pause, he continued, chickens are raised for the castle. The castle subsidizes the feed for the chicks. After they are raised, the castle will take them back. However, the eggs laid by the hens during this period will be recovered by the castle at the market price as a reward for the farmers raising the chickens. Do you have anything to add? Sir, in this way it seems that no farmers are willing to raise roosters, or do we only raise hens? Isaiah asked. He knew that even without roosters, hens would lay eggs. But without a rooster to mate, hens could not lay eggs and could not hatch chicks. List answered without thinking, set a standard. Farmers who are willing to raise chickens must raise 9 hens with 1 rooster. Those who have the conditions can try to hatch their own chicks. These chicks belong to the farmers themselves. Of course, you also have to review. Those who do not have the conditions to raise chickens are not allowed to raise chickens. Winter was coming. If they could not even build a chicken coop, then raising chickens would only freeze them to death. If they were willing to let the chickens live with people, then there was no need for a chicken coop. After a brief discussion, the chicken raising operation was launched. 1,500 chickens were divided among the households. It was easy to pick out farmers suitable for raising chickens. At the same time, the Flower Caravan and the Thorns Caravan were also notified to purchase chicken seedlings from major cities, and even mature chickens, and send them to the Flower Town. Within half a month, it should not be a problem to raise 1,000 chickens before the arrival of the winter snow. Gort counted on his fingers. In previous years, the temperature would drop and snow would fall in the Flower Town in mid-December. Then it would continue intermittently for 2 months. By mid-February next year, the temperature would begin to rise. List swirled the red wine in his glass. This was the castle banquet, not only the Flower Town but also half of the Coral Island. However, the Flower Town, located in the northeasternmost corner, would be the most seriously affected. He guessed that the snow was probably brought about by a small cold current. On Earth, the temperature would often plummet with the arrival of a cold current. This world was not clear, but the general principle should not be very different. The Coral Island was an island and would be deeply affected by the cold current, even if it was only a small cold current. By the way, Advisor Gort, how is the preparation for the winter cold going? Oh, please rest assured, for the sake of my pitiful salary, no serfs will freeze to death in the Flower Town this year. I swear by the glory of the night. If one freezes to death, I will personally go to the Eagle Kingdom and catch a serf. Gort said exaggeratedly. He was actually trying to amuse and lighten the atmosphere of the banquet. Since List gradually turned the banquet into a work meeting, the explosive atmosphere of a normal aristocratic banquet had rarely appeared. Everyone was used to eating and drinking. This was probably related to List's quiet temperament. On the other hand, Gort liked liveliness. Elegantly cutting the steak, List, unaffected by Gort, continued to maintain his usual quiet temperament. The cold protection work is only part of the winter strategy. This winter the serfs cannot be left idle. We must continue to carry out projects to transform the infrastructure of the Flower Town. Chapter 206. Elk Sun still took the time to study the bone fragments handed over by List. Of course, he is not a scientist after all. He is just a magician whose passion for communication is greater than his pursuit of truth. After a few days of fiddling, he handed the fragments back to List. Baron List, according to my judgment, this is the remains of a huge creature. Over the years, the magic attached to the bones has completely dissipated. So, it can probably still be used to make bone tools. The hardness is very good, not much worse than iron. He gracefully saluted. In addition, thank you for your generous hospitality. I have finished making a new batch of flame mushroom magic potions, so I will say goodbye to you. Well, next time you come, don't forget to continue to buy magic books for me. No problem. Elk Sun left lightly, presumably going back to Coral City. Magicians are also human beings. They can go to brothels and continue to explore the truth of life without getting married. In front of the apple table there were a few snacks and pastries. Dosen lay on the edge of the table, staring at the pastries, wanting to eat but not daring to stretch his head. A beautiful white elf, Ella, swayed on the apple tree. With List watching from the side, it did not tie up trembling woods. Instead, it dozed off on the tree. Occasionally, leaves fell and it flew out, chasing the leaves, entertaining itself. On the chair under the tree, List leaned back and turned the dragon bone fragments in his hand, looking a little disappointed. It seems that it can only be used to make bone tools for the serfs to plow the fields. Alas, dragon bones are such precious things, they are used for farming, what a waste. Butler Carter came over and reported, Master, there are a total of 20 carts of bone fragments, all of which have been transported into the warehouse and stacked neatly. Do you want to count them yourself? No, Mr. Carter, I am very relieved that you can check for me. Carter smiled reservedly. Thank you for your trust, Master. It is my honor to serve the castle. Don't forget to tell Harpagon and Sherlock about the search for bone craftsmen. The bone shop has begun construction, but the bone craftsmen have not arrived yet. Also, help me find out more about the signs of competition between the two. I don't want the two caravans to have a conflict because of the sale of the flower soap. Don't worry, I'll keep an eye on Harpagon and Sherlock. List nodded and said to himself, what businessmen need is control. Once they are given extra power, they will get carried away. This is not good. He also gradually began to hate the merchants. Sure enough, well-behaved farmers were the Lord's favorite subjects. Merchants were active and their ambitions would always expand from time to time. Because the production of flower soap was temporarily limited, in order to limit the other side, the two even bribed Burnell to suppress their opponents. They completely forgot about List's intention to cooperate with them. Punishment had to be meted out. He was prepared to have old Grandet come out of retirement once more, reorganize the two caravans, and reduce their independent power. He was going to promote a few natives of the flower town to serve as important backbones of the caravan. To supervise and restrain Harpagon and Sherlock. It would be great if we had the 3-corpse brain pill. We could give them one each and they wouldn't need to use any tricks to restrict them. They would be obedient. The Sun Moon Church's art of control was better than fear, and fear was better than taking medicine. List was very envious. Without the 3-corpse brain pill, it would be great if I could learn the life and death charm of Tianshan Tonglao. He couldn't help but think. There was internal strength in martial arts books, and there was magic in this world. Could it be possible to develop magic and chi to achieve the effect of the life and death charm or the 3-corpse brain pill? At least the magic contract, in a sense, had some control over life and death. He took out the thick bast paper. He wrote a few serpentines on it, life and death control magic, chi or contract development plan. Then he stuffed the thick bast paper into the space gem. For the time being it was just a thought. He didn't have the ability to develop it. Perhaps it would not be too late to develop it later. The return of the flower brought half of the ship's bone fragments. This was only a small part of the bone fragments from the boneyard, but they were piled up in a newly built warehouse. With such sufficient raw materials, the amount of bone tools that could be forged would be massive. The primitive farming civilization of the flower town would leap to a new level of civilization after the farming tools were ready. At that time, a serf could cultivate more farmland and make use of all the empty wastelands of the flower town. When the last batch of bone fragments was delivered to the town by the flower, it was already close to mid-December. A bonesmith in the Coral City, Blake Bonesmith, under the temptation of a large sum of money, finally agreed to go to the flower town to preside over the bonesmith shop, forge bone tools for the flower town and teach apprentices. His family also came with him. His wife, 2 sons, daughter-in-law, and a newborn grandson. This family all had the skills of a bonesmith. Of course it was not exquisite. Therefore they could not compete with the other bonesmith shops in the Coral City, which was why they were willing to come to the rural town. Blake, do your best and work for me. The return you will get is far greater than your efforts. List met with Blake. Your 2 sons are already fixed and have no development potential. However, when your grandson grows up, I can make an exception and let him train with the knight and become my retainer knight. Throwing out the opportunity to become an aristocrat, this move was always successful. Blake knelt down excitedly. I am willing to work for the Sir Lord and do my best. Very well, in the future, you will be proud of today's choice. The bonesmith Blake was fooled. Isaiah sent another piece of good news. The Flower Town scale of raising chickens officially crossed the 1,000 mark. After hearing about the benefits of raising chickens, all the farmers enthusiastically signed up, knowing that eggs were good things. However, chicken seedlings were not easy to buy. Most of them were saved from the rural farmers' homes one by one. Before the winter snow arrived, 1,000 were barely saved up. Mission completed. Reward: Fire Attribute Mineral Vein. The smoke mission was followed up in time, and the mission reward was issued. It was a mineral vein that List had never heard of. Fire Attribute Mineral Vein, what kind of ore is this? It sounds very valuable. It seems to have something to do with the dead fire dragon? It should be on Black Horse Island. It is likely that when Marcus led people to excavate the fragments, he found this kind of fire attribute mineral vein underground. Fire dragon, fire attribute mineral vein. List could not help but link the two together. However, in the description of the dragon, the elemental dragon did not produce minerals. He had never heard of a fire dragon that could produce this kind of fire attribute mineral vein. When Marcus comes back, I will ask him what ore vein he found. If he didn't find it, then I will have to immediately send people to search and excavate it. I have a feeling that the fire-attributed core is very important to me. After all, I am a fire-attributed chi. Thoughts flashed. Chapter 207. Looking at the contents of the smoke serpentines in front of him, List frowned deeply. Mission: the female monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground are about to give birth. The fruit farmer's skills in picking fragrant coconuts will come in handy, but natural reproduction is not as fast as wild capture. Please expand the size of the monkey group to 30. Reward: a thief who spies on the Lord. There was no problem with the content of the mission itself, and it was not difficult to expand the monkey group. If you buy monkeys from other places, as long as you pay enough money, there will always be hunters who catch monkeys and sell them. But the reward puzzled him. A thief who spies on the Lord, what does this want? He had always believed that the Flower Town was a paradise on the Coral Island. With the protection of the Tulip family's bloodline, no one would have any ideas about the Flower Town. But this mission reward was directed at List himself. There was a thief who was ready to spy on him. Is it to remind me that there is a thief who is going to harm me? List shook his head, not believing this possibility. Obviously, the smoke mission will not be so straightforward. Perhaps this is the same as the Invisible Dragon Chain mission? It is a reward for the invasion of the Invisible Dragon, but in fact, it is a space gem. With his exploration and knowledge of the smoke mission, this possibility is very high. But in any case, the security and defense of the territory must be strengthened. Although the essence of the smoke mission is to reward me, if there is a thief, I will have to bear the loss myself. The smoke mission is just a choice of fate. I am afraid it will not work if I am not prepared. He informed the caravan to buy monkeys. He summoned Carl and Rom and ordered them to strengthen the management of the patrols and insect protection teams and pay strict attention to all movements in the territory. Marcus was in charge of the work on Black Horse Island, so he temporarily let the 2 retainer Knight and Xavier maintain the castle's patrol security. He also told the butler, Carter, to pay attention to check the people entering and leaving the castle, whether they were servants, territorial officials, or officers. Once there was a suspicious person trying to sneak into the castle, he was to be notified immediately. Master, are you aware of something? Carter was puzzled by List's orders and seemed a little nervous. List nodded. The Flower Town's development is very rapid. In less than a year it has already changed its appearance. If it were any other territory, I would also have some thoughts that I shouldn't have. The winter snow is about to descend, and I don't want anything unpleasant to happen at the last moment. I understand. I will strictly instruct the servants to protect the safety of the castle. Yes. List replied absent-mindedly. He walked to the window and looked at the gloomy sky outside. The temperature had begun to drop and the cold current had arrived. The sunny days of Flower Town were about to pass, and the annual 2-month-long ice and snow covered the town. He looked into the distance and saw a field of black nightshade. At the edge of the black nightshade field, a group of serfs were working in full swing. They were building an ice cellar. Building an ice cellar wasn't easy, as it required a lot of construction skills to build an underground cellar that could store ice cubes. More importantly, the construction process would cost a lot of gold coins. Liszt dared to build an ice cellar, of course, because he had a profitable business and was full of confidence. For this reason, he contacted Tulip Castle and invited the island's master craftsmen and architects to preside over the construction of the ice cellar. This architect, Mbappe Gravel, was a distant relative of Viscount Jonas Gravel of Gravel Castle. It was he who presided over the construction of the magnificent Tulip Castle. After coming to Flower Town, he took a fancy to Dosen's rockthorns at first glance. Baron Liszt, with Dosen's rockthorns, the difficulty of building an ice cellar will be greatly reduced and the speed will be greatly accelerated. This is a natural cellar support pillar. The rockthorns released by Dosen each reached a height of 2.5 meters, sharp at the top and thick at the bottom, with the thickest reaching a diameter of about 40 centimeters. It could release at least 200 rockthorns a day. It was not an exaggeration to say that it was a small rock dragon. Dosen Avenue has long been completed, and rockthorns are still produced every day, almost piling up into a mountain. Therefore, in the future, if Liszt wants to build a new castle, there is no shortage of materials. Then again, the basalt on Black Horse Island is also a good building material. This year I will build 3 ice rooms for your cellar, which is almost enough. If you want to continue to expand, you can wait until next year. As long as you have money, you can build any big ice cellar. The ice cellar of Tulip Castle has 25 ice rooms. Mbappe Gravel did not care much about this small project. He only occasionally came to supervise the work, and the serfs and his apprentices were working. The ice room is a room in the ice cellar used to store ice. A standard ice room can store 300 cubic meters of ice, which is equivalent to the size of a house of 100 square meters. 3 ice rooms, 900 cubic meters, plus a little saltpeter left. There is no need to worry about ice in Flower Town next summer. When Carter brought him a cup of coffee, Liszt took his eyes back from the window, sat back in his chair, and smiled a little self-deprecatingly. "Mr. Carter, do you think we are like squirrels going through the winter? When autumn comes, we start looking for food to hide and eat in the winter." Carter responded a little playfully, "I think squirrels are a very smart little animal. Other animals can only starve during the winter, but they can hide in their caves and eat a little of their own hard-earned food every day. This kind of life is actually what the civilians of the town look forward to." He went on to say, "Your arrival has made Flower Town rich and brought them the life they want." Liszt quite likes to listen to this kind of flattery. Although he is no longer pure, and all the interests are based on himself and his aristocratic identity, he thinks that he has really made the civilians of Flower Town live a good life. It is natural for the people to thank him, respect him, and worship him. If you don't have these 3 feelings, then you are an ungrateful ingrate. They are my people. As a lord, it is my duty to lead them to a happy life," Liszt said lightly. His expression was calm. There was no complacency, no compassion, only the nobility that aristocrats should show. If it was an ugly aristocrat, no matter how noble it is, it would be the same thing. But with Liszt's handsome face, it directly exudes a great personal charm. Carter was immediately excited. "You have inherited all the nobility of the Tulip family and the Taro family. May the glory of the night always look after you." The touching performance in the castle continued. On the vast sea outside Coral Island, several sailboats with red tulip flags were braving the wind and waves. The cabin was filled with ragged, sallow and emaciated serfs, who reeked of a horrible stench. These serfs seemed to have lost their spirit, lying weakly on the planks, motionless for a long time. "It's time to eat, it's time to eat." The shouts of the sailors came from afar. The serfs, who were half dead just now, quickly changed their state and rushed out of the cabin. A little female slave, about 8 or 9 years old, was knocked down by the serf next to her and fell to the ground. Watching as the others squeezed out of the cabin to get food, tears welled up in her eyes and quickly rolled down her dirty cheeks. Suddenly, Chapter 208. Wiping away the slave girl's tears with her thumb, the owner of the hand said in a hoarse voice, "Get up." The slave girl raised her head and saw a face with a scarf on it. Her hair was messy and the scarf was dirty, but the exposed eyes were so bright that the slave girl could not open her eyes. She was wearing a leather armor that had been worn for many years, and the edges of the armor had been worn thin. She carried a big sword on her back and the hilt was wrapped in rags. Her chest was tightened by the leather armor. Because she squatted down, her knees touched and squeezed, and the threads of the leather armor almost burst. After wiping the slave girl's tears, she stood up. She was tall. Her clothes looked a little sloppy, but it revealed a strange wild temperament. This made the slave girl quickly remember the group of people who rushed into the village, killed, robbed, separated her from her family, and took her to the serf market. According to the serfs in the market, that group of people were evil mercenaries. And the woman in front of her was like a mercenary. Ah! Frightened, the slave girl seemed to have gained strength. She struggled to get up from the ground and apologized in a panic. "I'm sorry, madam. I didn't mean to fall." The mercenary looked at her and said in a hoarse voice again, "You didn't do anything wrong. Why should you apologize?" The slave girl did not know how to answer. She was so flustered that she wanted to cry again. "Come with me," the mercenary said in an unquestioning tone and turned to leave the cabin. The slave girl was hesitant, but she did not dare to not follow the other party. She lowered her head and did not even dare to look at the mercenary's back. The mercenary seemed to be walking in the direction of the cafeteria. "On the way," she suddenly said in a hoarse voice, "girls have to learn to be strong, especially when walking alone." The slave girl did not know how to answer, but it seemed that the mercenary did not expect her to answer. In a flash, she walked to the cafeteria. The mercenary pushed away the crowded serfs, took the slave girl to the window to get food and shouted, "Fat Jack, get her a meal." "Ah yes, Captain Swan." While speaking, the mercenary had turned around and was ready to leave. The slave girl stood in front of the window, not knowing whether she should get food or follow the maid. Until Fat Pig Jack put a semi-liquid food on a wooden plate and stuffed it into her arms. "Take it, I don't know what's wrong with Captain Swan, but he's helping the serfs get food again." Holding the fragrant rice, the slave girl felt that she was about to cry again. This time she was so happy that she wanted to cry. His daily meal had never been as full as today. She whispered in a mosquito-like voice, "Thank you." She didn't know if she was speaking to Pig Jack or to Captain Swan. But she squatted in the corner of the deck and ate the food mixed with beans and flour. The name Captain Swan was firmly engraved in her heart. She couldn't understand the serpentine between the mercenary and the sailor. She only remembered the pronunciation of Fat Pig Jack's name for the mercenary. Captain Swan is very sympathetic to the slave girl? On the bow deck, the female mercenary was enjoying the sea breeze. The second mate of the ship walked forward and asked in what he thought was an elegant manner, "Why can't I?" "Of course not. On the contrary, such a move is heartwarming. I can see that under Captain Swan's tough style, there is a soft female heart." The mercenary didn't answer the topic and just looked at the sea. The second mate was not reconciled and said, "I've seen you help several of these little slave girls. Do you see your own shadow in them? People tend to reminisce about their past selves. Did you have such a childhood?" "Sorry, I didn't mean to mention it. I just wanted to know more about you, Captain Swan." A moment later, just when the second mate thought he had failed, the mercenary looked at the seagulls on the sea and slowly said, "I have a sister. I haven't seen her for 4 years. If she were still alive, she would be the same age as the slave girl." "Well, I see. Parting from family is indeed." Not waiting for the second mate to answer, the mercenary suddenly changed her tone and said impatiently, "Now that your curiosity has been satisfied, can you get out of here?" "Ah, don't be like that, Captain Swan. I know you're in a bad mood now," the second mate said, reaching out and trying to pat her on the shoulder. "I just want to comfort you, or I can lend you a shoulder." But not waiting for his hand to touch her shoulder, the mercenary suddenly hit the second mate 2 meters away with an elbow. "Get out. You!" The second mate was angry. He was greeted by the cold eyes of the mercenary and a hoarse voice, "Don't bother me if you don't want to die. I believe the captain won't care if a few bodies are left at sea." The second mate was full of anger, but he immediately choked back, rubbed his chest and walked down the deck unwillingly. When he entered the cabin where the sailors rested, he was immediately laughed at by a group of disheveled sailors. "Speak, look, the best performance of overestimating yourself. Haha, with your pockmarked face you dare to provoke Captain Swan. It's so funny. Don't be discouraged, Speak, you lasted 2 minutes longer than Fox. Spick didn't last more than 5 minutes. The loser pays for it consciously. In order to celebrate Speak's failure, I've decided to have another sip of watered-down gin, ha." The sailors in the cabin laughed rudely. The mercenary didn't hear it. She leaned on the railing of the deck, watching the bow break the waves, and her thoughts drifted away. Coral Island. Flower Town. Little Maggie. At the same time. The place she was looking forward to. In the castle, the gray-haired butler Carter walked over to the lord who was writing the historical epic of dragons fighting in the wild, and said, "Master, there is one thing you should be happy to hear." "What is it?" List, who was writing a historical account of the evil fire dragon and the powerful dragon knight fought in the blue wave sea, asked without looking up. "The castle's trainee maid, Maggie, has become a contract mother and daughter with Mrs. Harriet of the grocery store." He heard the news about Maggie. List put down his quill pen, raised his eyebrows and asked, "So, what's the plan of Harriet's family to take Maggie back and stop the internship?" Maggie was a clue related to the smoke mission. He spent a lot of excuses to transfer Maggie to his side. He didn't want to let Maggie go casually. Carter's answer made him breathe a sigh of relief. "Of course not, Master. It is a great honor for civilians to be able to work in the castle. Harriet's family is reluctant to give up such a good opportunity." "Well, Mr. Carter, congratulate Maggie for me. By the way, will she come to the internship this afternoon?" "She didn't ask for leave. She should be doing the internship as usual." "Well, give her a grilled steak for dinner." Chapter 209. December 13th, early morning. For the monkeys in the fruit-stealing monkey training ground, the first snow of the year came with the arrival of new members. The monkeys that the Sir Lord ordered to buy had not yet arrived, but the 3 pregnant female monkeys had already given birth to baby monkeys, a total of 4, and one of the female monkeys was pregnant with twins. Perhaps the Flower Town was really a place blessed by the night's glory, as the 4 little monkeys had all survived. They could just see the first snow of Flower Town, mixed with the whistling north wind. Squeak. Squeak. The monkeys cheered for the arrival of the snow in their own language. When the snow came, the fragrant coconut trees would stop growing, and the fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen. They stole fragrant coconuts all year round and knew this very well. The fragrant coconuts would no longer ripen, which meant that they didn't have to work this winter. Unfortunately, such an idea was ridiculous. Early in the morning, Jiggs, the manager of the training ground, took out fake fragrant coconuts and began training day after day. "Sir Lord will buy more monkeys, and when the time comes, this group of fruit-stealing monkeys will be the model for the new monkeys to imitate, so everyone be sure to train well and let the fruit-stealing monkeys be role models." Jiggs shouted loudly. In the training ground he enjoyed the authority of a leader. Several other fruit farmers had to listen to him. "The female monkey I trained can't train anymore today, she has to feed her own children." "Then you go shovel the snow." "Why do we have to shovel the snow?" "We don't shovel the snow every year, it's better to just stay in the house," a fruit farmer said indifferently. Giggs immediately said angrily, "Correct your attitude. Consultant Gort has already announced to the entire town that all farms and workshops must shovel the snow in front of their doors and work areas. After that, they must also shovel the snow on the roads nearby. You fool, do you dare to disobey the advisor's orders?" The fruit farmer certainly didn't dare to disobey, but he dared to complain to Jiggs. "Why didn't you say so earlier? If you had said so earlier, I wouldn't have let the snow pile up in the training ground." Although he complained, he still took the broom he made in the farm and began to shovel the snow. It was just one night of snow, so the snow was not thick and could be swept away with a broom. Just like the fruit-stealing monkeys' training ground, the entire Flower Town began a mighty snow-shoveling battle at dawn. The patrols beat gongs and drums and went from house to house urging the serfs to get up and shovel the snow. The snow on the roads must be shoveled first to prevent the carriage from moving and the construction of the territory from being delayed. This winter was destined to not be peaceful. Many meetings had been held in the castle and the administrative office to plan the construction works for the winter. Stretching, List was a little reluctant to get up from the bed. It started to snow last night, and the temperature had dropped to the point where he needed to wear thick clothes, so he had already covered himself with a quilt. Although the earth night was resistant to cold and heat, no one would be stupid enough to be frozen. Of course he needed a warm quilt. However, with his strong willpower, he resisted the corrosion of the bed and got up to open the door. The male servant and female servant were already waiting outside the door. The manservant Thomas had to help him get dressed, while the maid was responsible for cleaning the room. "Good morning, master." Thomas saluted with the leather armor in his hand. Little Lily, carrying a bucket, a duster, and a mop, also bowed to List. "Good morning, master." "Good morning." List was used to being helped to get dressed. He carefully tidied up his appearance in front of the mirror, then hurried out of the bedroom to walk the dog outside. Before he went out, he heard a cry. It was the thorny sprite Ella, who flew out of the worm room and went out with him. List smiled and touched Ella's little head. "Ella, I'll take you to see the snow." "Wow." Ella's eyes were wide open and it was curious. It had never seen snow before. This was the first time it had seen snow since it was born. As soon as it left the castle, it flew around excitedly, fiddling with the snow on the ground, trees, and windows from time to time. Dosen stood at the door of the kennel and barked excitedly. It was also the first time it had seen snow. However, it should have seen enough last night. Now it probably saw List and knew that it could have fun, so it was excited. Dosen's chain was untied. Intermediate World of Warcraft, which had been raised as a watchdog, flew out in one stride, shaking its head and tail in the snow, playing with the snow. Clatter. A small snowball hit Dosen's head. Ella learned from List and pinched a snowball to have a snowball fight. But its hand was too small and the snowball was even smaller. Dosen didn't feel anything at all. Seeing that Dosen ignored it, it was furious and raised its hand to sow the seeds. However, the telepathic List felt its emotions and immediately stopped its behavior. "Ella, play with the snow, don't scatter seeds." Since it was so naughty, he might as well take it to the Thorns Ridge to plant trees. Then he pinched a large snowball himself and threw it. Clatter, it hit Dosen's big head. Trembling Wood stared blankly for a moment. It looked around but it didn't know who hit it. A few seconds later, its attention shifted and it began to roll in the snow again. The snow was thin, so it just pressed its body and the snow melted, revealing the alfalfa underneath. It was rolling snow, but it was actually rolling grass. Very childish behavior, but considering that it was not even a year old, it was normal to be childish. Leaving Dosen and Ella to play with the snow, List began his daily cultivation class. The plan of a day is in the morning, the plan of a lifetime is in the diligence, and the polishing of chi is the work of water. If you want to become a flying sky knight and be known as a sword saint, you have to work hard. After the cultivation class, he returned to the castle to take a bath and change into formal noble clothes. He let the servants move the table to the window, leisurely eat breakfast, and enjoy the scene of the servants shoveling the snow. This is the tranquility of the countryside, which he could not enjoy before crossing over. Of course, the prosperity and charm of modern civilization is also incomparable to this backward world. He sometimes asks himself, if he was given a choice now, would he go back to his original life or stay as an aristocrat? For the first 2 months in Flower Town he would choose to go back. Now he will not hesitate to choose to stay and continue his unfinished dragon riding career. It's just that I miss soybean milk, fried dough sticks and porridge buns. By the way, why don't I let Mrs. Abby and the bakery's Rainer invent the buns? They were all pasta, but the pasta made from wheat flour was not just bread. Steamed buns, flour rolls, dumplings, wontons, noodles, pancakes, fried dough sticks, glutinous rice balls, shumai, ramen, these are common noodles. Although List was originally a southerner and did not eat much noodles, dumplings and steamed buns were obviously more in line with his taste than eating bread every day. Thinking about this, he could not help but think of Xianglin's classic quote. Chapter 210. Steamed buns, fermented flour, kneaded with water and then steamed in a pot. After breakfast, List took a piece of thick bast paper and began to sort out his impression of pasta cooking methods. Most pasta dishes were very simple. Even if he didn't eat much, he knew the basic method. The most important thing in dough is fermentation. Fortunately, bread also needs to be fermented, so the rest is a matter of creativity. But think about it carefully. It was not just a matter of creativity. Although there was magic and chi here, food preservation was a serious constraint. Bread had a long shelf life, especially the black bread eaten by civilians, which could be eaten for half a year. But steamed buns, if not eaten for 2 days, would probably grow hair. Even if civilians came up with this delicacy, they were reluctant to make it. Not finishing it was a serious waste. When a knight goes out to fight, bread should be the main food. It is easy to carry and not easy to spoil. At least bring some biscuits and baked pies. You can't go to the battlefield with dumplings and youtiao. He concluded and felt that it was a bit presumptuous. Pancakes, noodles, cornbread, they have a long shelf life, just a little water, they can be eaten anywhere. So, in the final analysis, it was poverty that limited the imagination of the locals. He continued to study the recipes and wrote down the pasta cooking methods in his limited memory. Steamed buns, fermented flour wrapped in vegetables and then steamed in a pot. Dumplings, fermented flour, kneaded dough into strips, cut into small pieces, rolled into dumpling wrappers with a rolling pin, wrapped in vegetables and then steamed in a pot. Noodles, fermented flour, dough constantly pulled into long strips. Before he finished writing this entry, he suddenly felt that this method seemed to be the same as ramen. There should be a difference between ramen and noodles? Alas, I can't think of the difference. Forget it, I'll combine it into one entry. After writing these recipes, List thought about it. It was a bit high profile to launch too many at once. He picked out the simplest steamed buns and prepared to give advice to Mrs. Abby and the baker Rayner and let them invent it. With steamed buns, the subsequent buns were easy to make. Of course. After all, pasta was not List's favorite food. He was just going to make it and improve the taste. Therefore he wasn't really passionate about it. His favorite dishes were still the authentic Sichuan cuisine and Huayang cuisine. Unfortunately, these dishes had high requirements for knife skills, ingredients, and condiments. List could not do anything about it. It was not easy to instruct Mrs. Abby to make scrambled eggs and egg soup. Immediately, he ordered someone to call Rayner and Mrs. Abby and told them about a kind of pasta he got from other places. He also described the general appearance of the steamed buns. Mrs. Abby Rayner, study the steamed buns when you have time. Master, just leave it to me. The method of making steamed buns sounds very simple. I'll be able to steam steamed buns very soon. Since inventing several new types of bread, scrambled eggs and egg soup, Mrs. Abby already had the imposing manner of a star chef and was full of self-confidence. Rayner also nodded. I will do my best to assist Mrs. Abby. He had heard others say that Mrs. Abby had invented egg soup and scrambled eggs. All the chefs in Coral City had learned cooking from Mrs. Abby. Therefore, he admired her very much and was willing to cooperate with Mrs. Abby in food research. Mantu instructed. Read a book and write something. The short time of the morning was about to pass. Just when List thought that today would be another leisurely day, a knight galloped from Coral City. Lord Baron, the tulip caravan has returned. Sir Frank asked you to send someone to Coral City to hand over the business. He did not directly say that the serfs had arrived, but List naturally understood. I will send someone immediately. You go and rest first. Thank you, Lord Baron. A moment later, Gord arrived and was instructed by List to immediately arrange how to hand over the serfs. This time was different from the last time. The temperature had just dropped and it was snowing. If one was not careful, the serfs would freeze to death. Fortunately, preparations were made. The carriages of the caravan were requisitioned, and a bunch of cold-resistant materials were ready to go to Coral City. List had planned to go in person, but he remembered the mineral deposits of Black Horse Island. Calculating the time, Marcus would return with the ship this afternoon and was likely to bring news of the fire attribute condensed core mineral veins. He handed the 300 gold coins he had saved these days to Gort. Consultant Gort, I bought this batch of serfs for 210 gold coins. There are 1,000 of them. The number of losses does not exceed 150 is acceptable, but more than that, you need to compensate me. I will explain it to Frank in detail. These 300 gold coins are the cost of buying a new batch of serfs. Try to keep the price of serfs as low as possible. The war will definitely bring countless serfs. I believe there is room for further compression of the price. How to talk is up to you. Please rest assured I am familiar with Frank. Even if I can't touch his bottom line, I won't let him take much advantage of me. By the way, can I take advantage of him in some things? Gort was a little hesitant and embarrassed to say it. List said, say what you want to say. Your charm is unmatched on Coral Island, and you are the ideal marriage partner for many aristocratic ladies. I can see that Frank's family is eager to get your attention. Maybe I can use this to reduce the price to the bottom line and buy more serfs. Aristocrats are graceful, but it is normal to use all the resources around them for their own benefit. That's why Gort came up with such a handsome man trick. But List couldn't get past his own psychological barrier and directly denied it. Frank is a sensible aristocrat. I believe he has his own code of conduct, so don't involve little Sally. Try to fight for the difference of a few gold coins or a dozen gold coins. He did lack liquidity, but he had a lot of fixed assets, so there was no need to be unscrupulous. Especially when it came to feelings, he wanted to retain a sense of innocence. Alas, I was still alone at the age of 30 in my previous life, and I was troubled. In this life, when I turned 16, there was a line of girls chasing me, which also annoyed me. Sure enough, as List guessed. In the afternoon, when the snow stopped, the flowers returned from the sea. In addition to bringing half a ship of fire dragon bone fragments, Marcus also brought information about the fire-attributed core mineral vein. My lord, this is a stone I dug out from a crack in a rock pillar when I was excavating the bone fragments. It is very strange and I can vaguely feel the existence of magic power on it. He handed over an irregular reddish-brown stone. The surface of the stone was smooth, and the regular lines of concentric circles could be seen on the fracture surface, just like the shell surface of a clamshell. The overall texture was like glass and the edges were even transparent, but it was far less transparent than gems and crystals. It felt lighter than ordinary stones, and upon closer inspection, one could see that there were a lot of bubbles inside. Chapter 211. Volcanic glass is a natural glass formed in volcanic eruptions. List didn't know much about why glass was formed. Otherwise he would have studied glass a long time ago. As for whether the reddish-brown stone in his hand was volcanic glass or not, it was just his speculation. He was not an expert, so it was hard to judge. The smoke mission said that this thing is a fire attribute core. Marcus said that he felt signs of magic. I have to check carefully to see if it really has fire attribute magic. He immediately cast the magic eyes. His pupils rotated like a whirlpool, and his deep eyes swept over the reddish-brown stone. Suddenly, the reddish-brown stone changed, turning into a little red light in his field of vision. The light seemed very faint, but it exuded a gorgeous texture, which was completely different from the general fire attribute magic. An idea suddenly came to List's mind. This magic, it shouldn't be the residual magic of the fire dragon, right? Now that it has been inferred that Black Horse Island was created by the fallen fire dragon, it is not surprising that the magic in this magical stone belongs to the fire dragon. He even thought of a possibility that the volcano formed by the fire dragon should be an active volcano that often erupts. After all, the magic of the dragon is long-lasting. But if there is a rock wrapped in magic, the volcano will definitely die without the influence of magic. This kind of stone is called a fire attribute core, and the bubbles inside are wrapped in magic. It is very likely that the magic of the fire dragon was wrapped in it, making it impossible to drive the volcano to erupt. The magic of the fire dragon. List felt that he was going to make a fortune. Anything related to the dragon was of great value. The fire dragon is an elemental dragon. Although it is not a metal dragon, a gem dragon, nor a sacred dragon, it also has the magical power to infect the surroundings. Therefore, the magic left by it is of extraordinary value. List suppressed his excitement. He calmly asked, "Teacher Marcus, is there a lot of this or on Black Horse Island? I don't know exactly how many there are on the island, but in the boneyard, there are a lot of these stones scattered in the cracks of the rock pillars." Mine all of it. Your feeling is correct. I can also see the magic power contained in it." Since Marcus didn't know that this was a product of Fire Dragon, List chose to keep it a secret. "I believe that this will be a good material for forging equipment or something else." However, he still underestimated Marcus's intelligence and imagination. "A magic stone, my lord. Don't you think it looks like a gemstone produced by a dragon?" He raised his eyebrows, then relaxed again. List pretended to be surprised. "Why would you think of a dragon gem? This kind of stone doesn't look like a gem at all." "Sir, it might not be a gem from a gem dragon or a metal from a metal dragon, but a stone left behind by an elemental dragon. Other than a dragon or a super dragon in World of Warcraft, I couldn't think of any animal that could be left behind. Coupled with these magical stones, it must be the remains of a dragon." At this point, Marcus became more and more certain that his inference was correct. Maybe many years ago, a dragon slayer killed a dragon, and it happened on Black Horse Island. This series of inferences. List's mood was very complicated. It should have been a lucky thing to have smart subordinates, but the sense of superiority in IQ was greatly reduced. Now that Marcus had guessed the answer, he thought a little and decided to no longer keep it a secret. "Do you really think that this is an elemental dragon?" "Yes, my lord." Marcus's eyes lit up, and his inspiration overflowed. "And I also thought of something else. The black-blooded horses on the island are extraordinary. They all thought that it was a World of Warcraft species, but why can't it be a dragon? They live on Black Horse Island and have been in contact with the remains of an elemental dragon for a long time. Perhaps they have been infected into a dragon stallion." Once the hole in his brain opened, he couldn't stop for a moment. Even the secret of the dragon stallion was guessed by him. Taking a deep breath, List said in a heavy tone, "Teacher Marcus, you should know what it means for us if this is true." Marcus thought seriously for a full 2 minutes and said aloud, "My lord, This means that you are the son of glory that Gort thinks you are. The glory of the night will always look after you. As your follower, I am deeply honored and hope to follow in your footsteps and make a career." His tone was full of excitement. After that, he knelt on one knee and performed a solemn knight's oath of allegiance. Seeing such a reaction, Liszt suddenly felt that he was sometimes too cautious. The knight system in this world was deeply rooted. The degree of brainwashing of the glory of the knight was no less than that of the Lord. The authority of the Lord was almost unshakable, especially for someone like Marcus who was passionate about nobility. Maintaining the authority of the Lord was to maintain his ideals and ideas. In the future he would also be a noble lord. So many secrets could actually be shared with his subordinates. However, with the idea that there was no harm in being cautious, Liszt still hoped to keep many secrets in his stomach, such as the space gem, the smoke mission, and how much money he had. The corners of his mouth curled up and he said lightly, "May the glory of the night watch over you and me." The performance was over and back to business. Liszt said in a deep voice, "I feel that the stone contains fire magic. Perhaps this is the product of a fire dragon." However, looking at the degree of decay of the bones, I am afraid that the fire dragon has been dead for more than thousands of years. It is hard to say how much benefit it can survive. Indeed, but it is a huge gain to determine that the black blood horse is a dragon horse. We don't pay enough attention to the black blood horse. The black blood horse really needs to be paid more attention. The domestication work will be handed over to teacher Marcus. I am willing to serve my lord. There is also this kind of stone, let's call it volcanic glass. Its mining work should also be followed up. Liszt felt that the fire attribute nucleus was a bit awkward and irresponsibly named it. I will study its role as soon as possible so that I can measure its value. Marcus nodded and suddenly asked, "Sir, would it be too wasteful to use those dragon bone fragments directly to make a bone tool for plowing?" "I also feel that it is wasteful, but I have asked the magician to study it. It has decayed for too long, there is no magic at all, and the magic has long dissipated, leaving only the advantage of hardness. Those 5 dragon bones should still have some magic. Well, focus on protecting them and leave them to be slowly studied in the future." "As you wish." After the discussion about the fire dragon and volcanic glass, Liszt remembered a previous idea. "Teacher Marcus, I have fought against Randy and Russell. Their strength is slightly inferior and has not been able to prove my strength. In Flower Town only you can prove my strength." Marcus was surprised. "Sir, have you honed your chi secret book?" Chapter 212. Bang. Bang. The knight spear made of fine steel bent and deformed with the impact of the 2 elite Earth Knights. Every time it collided, sparks were produced and a harsh sonic boom was heard, as if it would break at any time. Even if it did not break, the 2 spears were on the verge of being scrapped and needed to be melted down and recast. Liszt was surrounded by fire attribute chi, like a god of war in flames. Marcus was surrounded by wind attribute chi, like a drifting cloud. Russell and Randy, watching from a distance, saw the collision of flames and clouds. The clouds were defensive, the flames were offensive, and the sky was full of fiery clouds. Marcus is an elite Earth Knight, and Lord Baron is not at a disadvantage. Every time he charges he can suppress Marcus. "I can't believe it." Randy was stunned. Russell smiled bitterly. "I know that Lord Baron is very strong. I can't take a shot from him during the charge, but I didn't expect him to be this strong. Even Marcus is not his opponent. Perhaps this is talent." Randy sighed. "The Count founded the Coral Island. He is a talented knight. His bloodline, Sir Levis, Baron Olvera and Lytton, have shown excellent talent since childhood. Originally, the worst was Lord Baron, but I didn't expect Lord Baron to be so well prepared. Perhaps it also includes hard work. Every morning I can see Lord Baron practicing chi on the horse field." At this point, the 2 looked at each other and were silent. People who are more talented than you work harder than you. What else is there to say? At this time the 2 people in the distance launched their 6th charge. The flames were still fierce, but the clouds were gradually thinning. The moment the knight's spear hit, the violent burst of flames broke the thin clouds in one fell swoop. 1 black and 1 yellow horse staggered. Marcus's figure flew from the horse's back and fell heavily to the ground. His knight's spear was also broken in 2. Black Dragon raised its front hooves and neighed loudly. Liszt held the curved knight's spear with one hand. His chest was heaving up and down. After 6 consecutive charges, even the elite Earth Knight felt extremely tired. However, he was extremely excited. Panting, he said, "Mr. Marcus, I won." Marcus crawled up from the ground. There was a moment of confusion in his eyes before he calmed down and panted heavily. "My lord's strength has exceeded my imagination. Even though I don't have enough experience in charging, all that's left is time. May victory be with you from now on." "I took advantage of the horses," List said humbly. "Even without Black Dragon, I wouldn't be able to persist for long. My total amount of chi is already far behind yours." At this point he seemed to have thought of something. He opened his mouth and swallowed it back. He probably wanted to ask if List had become an elite Earth Knight. Marcus didn't ask and List didn't intend to say. He dismounted and motioned to the retainer knight to take away the damaged knight's spear. He said to Marcus, "I have proven my strength in charging on the battlefield, but I hope to fight with Mr. Marcus again tomorrow with a sword." Charging was more about chi while sword fighting relied more on fighting skills. Marcus nodded. "It's better to change it to the evening. I can recover my chi in the evening. I need to go to sea early tomorrow morning." Good. During the conversation, Randy and Russell had come over and congratulated List. After this battle, List had understood the gap between the Earth Knight and the elite Earth Knight. Referring to Marcus's strength, he had a clear understanding of the strength of the two. "I have learned a lot from the battle with Mr. Marcus. You can often ask Marcus for advice in the future." "Yes, Lord Baron. Let's go have a cup of milk tea." List took the lead and walked under the apple tree. The servant quickly brought 4 cups of milk tea, which was brewed with fresh milk. Nowadays, cows produce milk vigorously and can produce several barrels a day. Every day, in addition to supplying the needs of the banquet and List's personal drink, the children who train hard in the night class will also be rewarded with a cup of fresh milk. In this way there is still a lot of milk left every day. The serfs on the dairy farm will mix flour and milk to make dry milk powder. The original dry milk powder was all expropriated by Tulip Castle. Now the dry milk powder naturally entered List's castle and was stored. Whether it is eaten in the off-season or sold, it is a source of income. In the afternoon the sun came out for a short while, then shrank back and then began to snow. This situation will continue throughout the winter. With the nutritional supply of milk tea, Marcus's chi recovery speed is faster than expected, so the actual sword fight will be held ahead of schedule. List did not use the red blood sword. With the red blood sword, it is estimated that he can directly crush Marcus. He chose a steel long sword, a two-handed sword, and Marcus is also equipped with the same equipment, but List still wore the World of Warcraft leather armor, and Marcus can only wear ordinary leather armor. Lords and followers certainly can't enjoy the same treatment. No nonsense. There is no need for Randy and Russell to watch. The two are in the depths of the horse field, facing the flying snow, both holding swords against each other. List, who is inspired to become a flame sword saint, no longer has stage fright in this kind of actual training. His chi is freely gushing and every move seems to be trying his best. Longfei. The steel long sword in his hand stabbed upward, and a flame shot out like a flying fire dragon. Wind whirlpool. Marcus turned the steel long sword, and his chi wrapped around it. With the stirring of the long sword, it formed a whirlpool directly swallowing List's flame chi. Clang.